I gotcha. I need somebody more tech savvy on my team over here to get this podcast popping off.
I
Um,
feel you, man.
but yeah, man. So a few of the things that interested me, one obviously is that you're someone that clearly is attracted to the work that Ben has done in the same way that I have. What was your first introduction to him or his work?
So Ben, um, for me, I think I must have seen Psychedelica. I'm trying to remember if what he had out when I first came across Gaia. So I definitely knew Ben and came across his work when I worked at Gaia when I first got there. But I feel like I'm trying to remember what shows he had out at that year because he Psychedelica, Limitless, and I think I saw him on like George Norrie maybe or Regina Meredith's show, and I think whatever I saw of him though, like I definitely resonated with. Like this guy's cool. He seems very authentic, down to earth, grounded, and I like that he kind of approached things similar to me, where it's like he's integrating the heady stuff with the grounded thing. But once we started working together, it immediately was like, I feel like I've known you more than once, brother.
Yeah,
Not only in this life, kind of thing.
I hear you. I hear you. So I got to back up. Well, how did you get in at Gaia?
Yeah, so that was an interesting journey. That was kind of I it was the first point in my life where I really felt like this idea of the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, really was like actually like it felt like the universe was like doing a lot of really weird things that my analytical mind at the time was like, this is just really strange coincidences that are very like this is something like you'd see in a corny movie. Like so for instance, I I started just researching neuroscience and quantum physics and all the sort of scientific background before then that led me to more spiritual concepts. And
Like the double
that
slit experiment?
yeah. I mean, that alone just makes you kind of almost it just so. And I
Yeah.
was the guy at the beach when my friends were playing volleyball, and I'm like, oh my god, you guys, like, do you know about quantum entanglement? Do you know about the slit experiment? Like, you know, like 99% of reality is mostly empty space, and you know, dark energy, dark mass, neutrinos. Like, yeah, man, yeah, but like, just chill out. Like, all right, like, I love you, but like, you should have a podcast or something. And I was just like,
Yeah,
you're
for
right. I do
sure.
need an outlet. I need an outlet because I was sort of green thumb, so to speak, and just was like word vomiting sometimes. And yeah, sometimes went well. Sometimes I was like, oh wow, I'm really not picky up on these glazed over looks. But that's all part of the journey, so to speak. So anyways, I was just digesting so much content. I was, you know, I'd moved to Santa Monica. I'd been there a couple of years at that point. I was working with startup companies, but I was really just like, honestly, more at this point, like just finding myself, figuring out like what the, you know, am I allowed to cuss?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just you know what the fuck is going on, like why are we here, these big ontological questions that I think a lot of people all ask, but they find different roads to answer them, right? So religion, science, um whatever, you know, to each his own. But I was just really trying to be like, what's the truth, what's really going on here, like as an observer trying to just what's going on. And uh, long story short, I came across Gaia. I mean, you start to see a lot of their ads once you start going down sort of these subject matter things on YouTube, and so it was sort of inevitable. And I'm digesting so much. It was so funny when I actually started working there. One of the head guys in like our computer and like IT area, who was head of programming, who could like see all the analytics, was like, you know, actually your account has like the third most hours total watched on all Gaia subscribers. I was just like, Jesus. And so he's like, that's a lot. Like that's like thousands basically. So yeah, I mean, oh, so the crazy part. I'm into all that, and if you're into that stuff, a lot of times you'll find this guy called Jimmy Church, Fade to Black Radio.
Hmm.
Um, he's the man. He's a really cool guy. And he had a radio show with the creators of Contact in the Desert, which is a big ufology event. And it was the last year they actually did it in Joshua Tree outside, which is a really dope, awesome aesthetic. And then they moved to convention centers, and I think it's still been in that. So it was like this last sort of beautiful sort of set and setting for it. And I get there. Oh, how I get there though is crazy. I'm listening to Jimmy Church. He's got them on, and at the end, he's like, "Hey guys, all right, we're gonna give away free tickets to Contact Desert." You know, I'm in the Sprecher chat. So Sprecher is an app to listen to the podcast and has a chat function. And I'm talking with all the fans, the Fader knots as it goes by. And all the Fadernauts are all just chatting and laughing and having a good time. And I think I type, I'm like, oh man, it'd be cool to really go. Like I'm in Santa Monica, it's not even that far, but like, I'm just, just kind of talking out loud. And all the really cool, friends who kind of we develop relationships were like, Gordon, call in, come on, fuck it, like call in, go for it. And I'm like, this is silly. All right, whatever. And so I call in, and all of a sudden I hear an echo on myself, and I'm live with Jimmy. And I'm like, oh wow, like he's like, hello, you're live, and I'm like, hey Jimmy, I'm a big fan, kind of just fanboy. And he's like, well, where you live? I'm in Santa Monica. He's like, oh, so you're local. I'm like, he's like, congrats, looking forward to see you. Come up and see me at the booth. And it was just this amazing, really crazy synchronicity, as it's called, and this meaningful coincidence that really made me go like, huh, okay. And the other crazy thing is he'd given away all of the 3 tickets he was supposed to, but he's like, I'm feeling generous. Last caller, I'm gonna do one more, just like for shits and giggles. And that's who I was, that caller. And I'm like, wow, like even like there's stacks a little bit of that, like of like. So I was just like, that's wow, that's crazy. And it's like I gotta go then. Like this is like it's like sort of meant to be. But I'm like I try to get a friend to go. He ends up bailing, and it just ends up being me doing sort of a walkabout solo. I drive out there, park the car, crash, stay the night, stay looking at the stars of Joshua Tree. If you've ever been there, it's this beautiful open desert. Just you can see 360 stars, and I'm just like, about to go to this UFO huge concert with all these big name speakers and people I'd watched on Gaia that I thought were, top-notch people in the field. Some of that's changed since now, but one in particular that I really loved that was there was Richard Dolan and all these other awesome speakers, though, in general. And no matter what, like him or not, it was everyone, in the field. And so you got to see all perspectives, bottom line. And I wake up the next morning. It's just this very like, and I remember telling myself, like, I'm just going to really try to like, this is so weird that I'm already here and all this. And I'm just going to really try to be like, say yes, just be a yes man all day, kind of just like really try to just not limit myself. I remember that thought. And I just I check out I already knew what panels I really wanted to see. People talking about, especially, deep space, secret space program, just so I'm going around, I'm seeing the panel, I'm having a blast. We're sitting out in chairs, I'm meeting people. It's just I meet these really cool vendors. I buy this really cool I have it, but I buy this really cool like Egyptian organite thing, and I'm like, it's just cool.
The
and
organite pyramid.
Yeah, and it's like I think of Horus's eye, but I'm just like, I'm just like, and you're also just finding so. Oh, I remember I meet this woman the morning. She ends up crying and hugging me, and like we had this crazy like experience, and I'm like, wow, that was a strong start. Like there was just all these like relationships, or like I just was meeting people where I was like, this is, this is some heavy like bizarre real connection, and there's so many like-minded people, but I end up Gaia has a huge tent at one of the big outdoor concert stands where they're doing the speakers, and they're like one of the main sponsors for the event. And the chief marketing officer at the time, a guy, Jamie Bauer, really cool. We became really close. She's the first person I meet. We hit it off. She's like, oh, you really like the content. I'd love for you to meet the owner. Would you be cool to do a little B-roll video for like a sizzler for Gaia to put out talking about this, and you're going to be recorded, and end up being this guy Jay Weidner, who was one of the main producers I worked with a lot at Gaia, who's a really interesting dude in his own right. And
is that the same guy who is he the director of the Kubrick Odyssey?
Yeah.
Documentaries? Yeah. Those blew my mind.
He goes deep, man. He's like basically an occult master. Like he's a cult historian maybe, but like he knows his shit. And he's just an interesting dude. He's just a fun, charismatic personality. He can be a little bit I don't want to say this word triggering, but like he could definitely like either love him or hate him. It's kind of the vibe at Gaia. And I was in the camp. I'm like, he's cool. Yeah, he's rough around the edges at times. I don't agree with everything, but me and my friend Ryan, who's an editor and producer there, came really close with him as well. But anyways, yeah. So Jamie and I, she says, write down your info. We're strongly looking to hire, actively seeking people who actually know the content. And I end up having a great time at the concert or at the at the event. I think there was a major UFO sighting. I don't know if I saw it as much. It was up on this like hill, but like it's all recorded. You can go. Jimmy Church talked about it on his show, and there's other recordings. But there's all the stuff that was just like, it was heavy. It was just like, man, this is like, it was the really first time I felt like something bigger than me was going on, and this idea, like I got a lot of proof of concept. I got like a lot of real confirmation of like, this kind of stuff is actually fucking real. Like this idea of like the universe talking to you and you respond and back, and like there's a dialogue really that can happen if you see the subtleties. And it's not just some woo-woo theory, like, and especially when you experience it, it goes, man, like whatever you think, like it's hard, experiential wisdom is probably the strongest wisdom possible. So yeah, I get a call like a few months later. James says we'd love to come in, and it was ended up being like a 3-round interview and like almost a year before or later, but like end up moved to Boulder and did that gig for a while. And yeah, man, and then stayed in touch with Ben and connected, and really just like one thing led to another, where he really needed help with a lot of his social media presence and managing and help with production. And he had offered me something when I was still in Boulder, like to work with him, but I wanted to go back to Cali time, just for whatever reasons. And then it just like the universe, I don't know, it seemed like you guys like, we're gonna give you another shot, like make this work. So yeah, I kind of took more of the lead the second time, but Ben was like, now it's just made a lot of sense in a lot of ways.
So going back, you're from Virginia, which I kind of felt like was a minor synchronicity in of itself when I found that out.
Yeah,
So and you're from like Louisa County, if I remember properly.
Louisa, yeah, a really big, actually pretty big county, really small population, very rural. I grew up on Lake Anna, so the childhood was pretty awesome. It's pretty amazing. I was growing up with, I have 3 older siblings. Grew up on the lake, always just jumping on a trampoline, playing soccer, playing in the water. Just literally like mom would ring the door dinner bell and we'd come running. And yeah, parents both kind of intellectuals and artists. The more I gotten older, the more I respect them. When I was younger, I'm like, you guys are kind of weird, So like, I respect a lot of them more now. But I was a little bit of a shit at times, spoiled brat, full disclosure.
Same.
But
Same, and very similar upbringing. I was an only child, so even more of a spoiled brat. But yeah, raised in the country, 100 yards away from the Piankatank River, rural area, big county, small population, Middlesex County, if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if Louisa ever played them in sports. That's like the way we would like how we monitor. And she's like, did we play them in high school sports?
So y'all were considered the central region, I think, and we were tidewater region. So unless both teams made it, like,
I think it was like cross country meets, it would get more schools. I'd see like a Middlesex bus.
Yep.
But yeah.
Sounds right. That's awesome. And then when did you graduate high school?
007. That was our
same theme. 2007 as well. That's
did the
crazy.
James Bond theme. Yeah.
Yep, 7-Eleven. Yep. Awesome, exactly. Man.
Yeah.
So then, and if I remember correctly, you're also like classically educated on like financial, accounting, business type deal.
So I mean, specifically, studied economics in college, and then I was a financial advisor for a period of my life working at Merrill Lynch. So took the FINRA 7 in 66. Learned as much as you could from theoretical and pragmatic perspective, but still didn't realize the beast until I kind of stepped outside the system. And that took multiple things. But yeah, I'm at a point now where I'm kind of like, all right, it's a rigged economy, so like use it against them. Because I think we should break it for sure and change it. But like Ethereum, like, I don't know, like I've had these different perspectives of life, but I'm like, I don't know, like I feel like we've got to use it against them to a certain degree, but that doesn't mean in any way we can't funnel those funds to new systems, right? That's kind of a big part of what Ben and I are about, is like creating new systems, communities, just building bridges from media to pragmatic ways. But love it or not, hate it, we currently have the system we have, but it doesn't mean we can't use it against itself, essentially. That's sort of how I see it. Sort of like the Aikido.
Well, to kind of bring everything together, as far as my experience, I was also a very numbers oriented person growing up, like a math prodigy type of kid almost,
Oh,
2 years
wow.
ahead in math, and took like geometry in fourth grade, that type of stuff. Um, and so, my dad especially always kind of expected me to go like the financial route, be the CEO of a big bank, something like that.
Hmm.
And I went to Randolph-Macon, which is not far from
Hmm.
Louisa at all. And
Yeah.
my plan was double major, econ business and accounting. Econ and business is one major there. And just kind of like you, I had some experiences. Some of them may or may not have involved like LSD and psilocybin mushrooms.
Yeah.
But it was kind of ironic because I did have one economics professor who was more like a philosopher himself,
Nice.
and he took a liking to me. I took a liking to him, and he was like, "You should take this ethics course. I really think you're the type of big picture thinker that would incorporate the your economic, natural tendency to understand like the analytical side of things. I think ethics would really kind of develop you as a person." And of course, ethics was technically a philosophy class. And so
Right.
I took
Right.
it and I fell in love. And, 3 years later, I graduated with a philosophy degree and an
Okay.
economics minor.
Dude,
Um,
I feel like I could have done that so easily too. I took one like great works class, and I'm like, this philosophy stuff's pretty fucking cool. But then like my brother, or like I would just think about some voice of
Not
like, but like,
practical.
how
What
am I gonna
jobs can
fucking
you get?
use? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But oh
exactly. What
yeah, we're
jobs
reading
can you get? And
we're
that's the
reading
key.
Plato's The Cave, and I'm just like, this is some pretty. I like this shit, but yeah, I love philosophy.
And I would say one of the, I don't like, I feel like calling it a red pill is just so cliche at this point, but one of these moments that really opened my mind, to another level, because I started, I guess you could say it kind of cracked with stuff like, and I don't know if you've ever seen the movie America from Freedom to Fascism. It's a Aaron Russo documentary, and he talks about mostly the income tax law and how it's illegal, and the 16th Amendment and those sorts of things. And then, just coming at this whole conspiracy thing from a money angle. That was how I got into it. Learning about the Federal Reserve, how it's not, it doesn't have any government oversight. It's quasi
Mm-hmm.
public, quasi private. Um, and so that's kind of how I got into it. But, if you're somebody that's kind of experienced these sorts of things, when that first happens, there's a lot of anger, and I was kind of angry, and I was like, I was definitely more along the lines of like how your normal person would view a conspiracy theorist, kind of like you
I
were
think it's
talking about
natural.
yourself earlier,
I mean,
like
I think it's
word
yeah.
salads and stuff like that.
Well, no, I think it's natural in a certain way. Like, I really try to like. I can be my own harshest critic, but like, I think it's natural to. I mean, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. And I think it's kind of natural to be sort of angry. But the key next step is how do you process that anger? How do you integrate that anger?
And the best analogy I've ever heard regarding that is the truth is a scalpel. If you need
Yeah.
surgery, you have to cut yourself open to get out what you need to get out. And yeah, that cut is going to hurt, but it's also, preventing a slow death.
Right.
so,
Right.
so anyways, the reason I say that is, I was kind of like in this fuck the government, like kind of angry state when I first saw Kymatica.
Hmm.
Um, well, in fact, the very first thing I saw was not Esoteric Agenda. It was the end of Esoteric Agenda. It was on YouTube, just like the last 12 minutes. I'm sure you're familiar
Yeah.
since
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So the last like 12 minutes of that one is like he kind of goes away from talking about quote unquote the esoteric agenda and starts talking about illusion and reality and solutions. And it was just like he was incorporating all this stuff that I knew that was making me angry, and it brought me to a place of like conspiracy could actually bring out the best in the world. Like all of this stuff that's making me feel really uneasy and really angry could actually be like exactly what the world needs. And if we kind of push through it and do it in a real way, in a nuanced way, and have these types of conversations, um, I'm like the most optimistic conspiracy theorist I know, and I feel like there's almost like a conspiracy above the negative conspiracy to like bring us through. I know that
Well,
sounds
I mean, I was just
frou
editing
frou
Paul.
or whatever.
No, but like, there's a lot of truth that I was editing Paul Check today for the podcast clips, and Paul really made this astute point of like, you need darkness for the light to exist, right? Or else, it's the idea of yin and yang,
It's
and
the
this,
balancing act.
yeah, the darkness helps us recognize what is good, as he said, and so, um, they are playing a role, and they have a choice to play that role, but we can see that role as one of constructive and beneficial to the greater collective. And I think that's always going to exist in this universe. I think that's kind of, to get real heady here, I think that's part of this entire this our known universal design. I do believe in the multiverse theory, or this, being basically infinite. So I think in this universe, though, like, light and dark will always exist to a certain degree, but it doesn't mean we can't, you can reduce the darkness. I think we're overly, it's this idea of balance and moderation. And like, I think this school of earth, you want to call it, like, I think there's an overly amount of dark, we need to have a purging. We need to balance it out. And I think that's what's going on right now. And I think, I obviously want it to happen in the most loving, positive, constructive way. But I'm only one man, and I've learned more and more how important the power of numbers is. And, it's just so important. All these different agents and media and conduits to how we shift the collective, it has to be, I really just hope we can get enough of the right ideology. And I think it's happening because, like you said, these people, like, for instance, even the term conspiracy, like, for instance, to me, like Joe Rogan and like Russell Brand, for instance, two big name figures who are really shifting the collective. Joe would say he's like very not like a conspiracy theorist, but like a lot of things he talks about are things that certain people maybe would consider conspiracy. So a lot of it is honestly part of this nuance of like, what do you consider a conspiracy? Define conspiracy. Well, technically, it's two powerful people working together in collusion, or in secret collusion. So, okay, that just defined probably the vast majority of transnational conglomerates in the world. Like, I mean,
Or
so
business in general.
yeah, I mean, yeah. So that to me, where like, and I've learned that it sucks, but how important and nuanced labels are. Ben's kind of the school of thought, like, I want to like take back it and like, fuck them for trying to steal the word and ridiculing it. I think, if you look at the history of it, initially was created, or specifically conspiracy theory was, I think, pretty sure created by FBI or CIA as a, discrediting tool. But ultimately, I stray more away from like saying that term. I just say like, here are facts and figures, and then, because I it depends who I'm talking to. I guess you got to read your audience. And so
Yeah,
if somebody who's
sure.
going to be very guarded, I'm going to be like, okay, so how from, you ease them into these things. You got to sort of do very subtle, small sort of purple pills. But if it's something like yourself, I'm like, yeah, let's go fucking go hard. Like, let's drop some big ones. And that's just something I've learned on the journey, is like, you got to read your audience. Not everyone is at the same stage as you, and love them if they're not, forgive them for they know not. But like, you're going to possibly burn a bridge if you go too hard in the paint right away.
No doubt. No doubt. It's happened.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to the alien stuff, because I definitely noticed that Ben let you take the lead on the UAP
Dude,
disclosure series. And
oh man, yeah.
I know he wouldn't let you take the lead unless he felt like you were a strong candidate to be that person. So we'll get to that, but I do have a few other things that I wanted to cover. Just one thing to take away from what you were just saying, though, and I forget exactly how it relates to what you were saying, but I feel the need to say it, and then you can kind of give me the feedback. But something that I felt like I wanted to say when you were talking just then is this analogy that Don Miguel provides when talking about life itself. And, from the classical physics perspective, worldview, everything is action reaction, everything is cause and effect. So we really have no free will. And that may even be true. He says that may be true. Man may not have control over his destiny, but we always have one choice. And that choice is to enjoy the ride or to resist the ride. And he leaves it at that. But what I come to see is that choice kind of affects what happens moving forward. Like when you kind of incorporate the butterfly effect, right? Like if your future self came to right now to try to change something, then that probably means that you did it because whatever was happening in the future wasn't too great. So go ahead and do it, make the choices that you need to make right now to make your future better. See, like, it's that paradox of you don't have a choice, but once
Right.
you've made that one choice that you do have, it can change all of the other stuff that you might not have a choice over. But it's like that's the mystery right there, right? It's like
Yeah.
once you make the choice to enjoy the ride, then the ride itself becomes more enjoyable.
Yeah. I mean, I've learned to appreciate like the Buddhist idea of. I always thought, like, when I looked at the Buddhist idea of life is suffering, and then I realized that what they define suffering as is very different than I think what most people think. And it's almost like more like I think a better way to say is life is resistance, almost, or not even a resistance. Like it's to me, it's like life's gonna constantly have fucking waves coming at you, maybe more in sets, you know. And the more it sounds so bro logic, but like I love the culture of surf. I was just listening to something like it's all about Michael Mouse was saying to Joe Rogan. He's like, well, Tulsi Gabbard's a surfer, so like surfers are good at letting it go. And I'm like, yeah, that is why I like surfers and surf culture, because they're good at letting it go. It's all about like, just go with it, man. Like ride the wave. Like you can either ride the wave or let it crush you. Yeah, and that's all about like the psychedelic teachings. It's all like whether you get it from surf logic or psychedelics from your guru. It doesn't matter how you get to the truth. If it works and it's true, then okay, let's just move on, people. Let's not argue over the nuance of my guys that so. But yeah, and yeah, I love aliens. So whenever.
Yeah, let's get into that, because so, as I said before, my kind of tie-in to this truth community, conspiracy community, whatever label you want to put on it, for me, it's just I'm curious, and I like stories, and I like true stories. I like like origin stories, like how did we get here? How did all of this come about? Sure. And so, yeah, Zeitgeist was one of the ones that I saw before Kymatica, which I think Kymatica is, as far as documentaries go, I would say that's the one that I would recommend to anybody at any time, period. But like I said, money was kind of my in, and then to hear, and this information came along later along the line for me, but 2.3 trillion or 2.1 trillion publicly announced missing the day before 9/11. I guess I don't know the exact date of the Solari report that showed 21 trillion in total accounting adjustments or whatever the
the
missing
bullshit gap
basically.
term, generally accepted accounting principles. Yeah, it's their way of saying we're doing all kinds of shady shit with it and don't ask questions. We lost it. It's like, yeah, it's so ridiculous. It's when people really look at it, yeah, it's pretty. It's yeah, it can make you mad maybe.
And then like even the word trickery between like million, billion, and trillion, like they all sound alike, the illion, but it's like
True.
A million seconds is like 11 and a half days, and a billion seconds is like 31
it's that word
years.
magic, son. Yeah.
So then a trillion, and then 21 trillion, like
it really needs to be like, you need to say 999 million, like really to like, I think. Yeah, I know what you mean, but it is these weird subtleties that can make us kind of just gloss over, like, oh, okay, that's it. Wait, how much was it? Like a lot of times it's like, oh, it just gets so normalized, and it's like, oh, another billion missing, or the Pentagon, or this war, or the F-35 is causing, and it's just like, that's part of it. Is like they want to just beat you down. It's this war of attrition until they're like, just no, state, no, and then finally you're just like, all right, enough, I'm good. And some people are like, no, fuck that. I'm grabbing it and I'm in back. Or
yeah, I'm gonna keep talking about it until we figure it out.
Direct action, like the Gandhi or Dr. King approach. No, fuck that. We're gonna walk to the sea in the salt march, or we're gonna walk in the streets. But I've recently become really more inspired about direct action versus civil disobedience. So that's another tangent too.
Well, yeah. So I guess I want to hear you just kind of go a little bit deeper. I heard you mention Richard Dolan earlier. I remember that Richard Dolan, Catherine Austin Fitz interview being a big part of the UAP disclosure series on, I guess that was Awakening Infinity series, or was that just like a Ben Stewart podcast thing?
That was a Ben Stewart podcast, but it was the disclosure series. And I've been really itching. We got to get some guests specifically in that field on, because I like to keep kind of a diverse portfolio of the content, and so does Ben. But yeah, so we definitely we're gonna try to get Danny Sheehan, Richard Dolan, and Catherine Austin Fitz are the three ones. And we know people, Foster and Kimberly know Danny and them, so Ben can just try to get like a warm introduction, because I think sent an email but haven't heard back. But Yeah, so Catherine really, she covers the financial angle. Dolan really covers the sort of physical assets angle and historical angle. And Joseph Farrell, somebody else who's pretty strong as well on like the historical angle. And sort of side note, tying into you though, I actually got into this more from the whole, I guess you could say conspiracy, or just, you know, really finding out what the fuck's going on. I got in that more from the finance too as well, because that was my background and understanding the creation of money, the Federal Reserve, all that. And then I was working with a guy in LA, and I remember specifically, you know, because our brain actually catalogs, I found out in neuroscience, like it'll attach a lot more neurochemicals to the most meaningful memories, apparently. So that's why like certain memories just like you get this neurochemical juice on them when you think of it. And this dude Nathan I worked with was like a graphic artist. I was working for like a tech/fashion startup, and he's like, yeah, like somehow we got on topic of aliens, and I think we've been smoking a little herb. And he's like, yeah, like, you know, the Greys. I'm like, what? Because that was the first time I heard like a name like Greys. What are you talking about? Like gray aliens? He's like, yeah, man. And he started kind of a little like hesitant, but he stood his ground. He's like, yeah, like there's the big one people talk about are the gray aliens. I'm like, all right, bro. Like, it sounds kind of fucking out there. Like, are you fucking serious? Like, I was like, he's holding the ground. Like, all right, I'm gonna fucking, I'm gonna look into this. I'm gonna really take this seriously. And yeah, I did. And if you really do, I think most people, if you really do look at it and know the right resources, I tend to think I'm pretty good at researching. Like, it's hard to deny. I started going, oh shit.
So I mean,
man.
this is like the big reason why I got you on though, because I've been hesitant, you know, to talk about the extraterrestrial topic, although I cover pretty much everything, and I'm not scared to go there, but I do know that even some of my friends that are, you know, willing to listen to me when it comes to some subjects. When you start talking about aliens, it's kind of just like your reaction to your friend. It's like even the most open-minded person is going to be like, "Yeah, I'll look into it." You know what I mean?
You got to take it slow.
And that's why I started with the money, because what convinced me is $21 trillion. Like when you really understand how much $21 trillion is. Then they could be fucking making aliens.
Oh, it's more than that now, by the way. It's way more than that by now.
For sure. Yeah.
It's now up at 2830. They're saying the professor who worked with her. So it's more than our total debt, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, there you go, right there. And then, but when you, I mean, just think about what $1 billion. So just think about Tesla, the company, or Apple, the company. These are companies valued at several billion. Or in Apple's case, like one of the first companies to hit 8 trillion, Amazon, 8 trillion. Amazon, Apple, Google, take like the first like 30 companies that you can think of that caliber, combine their total value, and it is not how much is missing from the Pentagon. That's just fucking... I mean, really can't emphasize that enough.
I mean, the only way you can do that is you have the ability to create money, which they do, right? I mean, at this point, because we got the Federal Gold Reserve and we've changed the entire monetary system, the only way you could do that is you say, hey, I'm just going to print a shit ton of money, and a private company can't do that. That's called counterfeiting, and you'd get arrested very quick. So that's the only way. And clearly, I know I studied modern monetary theory. That was kind of my specialty in economics. And just like I studied open market operations, I knew all about, you know, the reserve rates, all that jazz. But none of it matters if you don't understand the real underlying systemic flaw within it. And the Bank of International Settlements, understanding where it all leads back, Geneva, Switzerland, these places that aren't touched by regulations, that are their own jurisdictions, their own cities, just like, you know, Vatican and in DC. And it allows for this kind of systemic corruption. And even the most hardcore free market capitalists, I find it really hard to really have them argue to me that even right now, like, we don't have a free market. This is a complete rigged economy, complete crony capitalism. And, you know, I really found this too from studying Michael Tellinger and Ubuntu and understanding the very traces of fiat currency going back to Babylon, and understanding the whole lineage as far back, and then understanding, you know, how important it is when it comes to financing wars, and understanding the corruption between big corporations and bank families and dynasties like Prescott Bush or, you know, General Motors. And, you know, they didn't care who they associated with, whether it was Nazis, fascists, you know, whatever party, as long as they were making money. Money was the almighty power, and that still is the case. Yeah,
The
yeah.
IG
So
Farben patent
that
is like
that's
the
how
good
these
smoking gun there, you know.
that's how these cats roll, man. I mean, they a lot of them unfortunately are that small percentage that I believe are psychopathic, sociopathic. They don't actually feel empathy and emotion. I mean, it could explain a lot for why they can do the things they do because they don't think like you and I. They don't have the empathy to say that's horrible. What I've caused possibly thousands, millions of people to die for my actions. No, I don't feel that. I mean, so I would hope to think that honestly, because if they do feel it and they're still okay with it, that's almost even worse. But it is what it is. It helps us recognize and hopefully create a better system. Using it all constructively. But like a big part of it is we got to acknowledge it. But I understand like when you start to really acknowledge it, I've honestly learned to like what's almost more important is the psychological. It's like the Morpheus role in the Matrix of like just first letting them process this and integrate it because that's really the most important. Because if they can't do that, none of the other steps are going to happen after. And for a lot of people, like just first getting them to integrate it the right way and understand the right actions to take once they've integrated it and like where to look to really understand the right information that to not really lead them astray and just because you can break free from the matrix, but then go down a whole nother bullshit matrix of something that really isn't going to be constructive to the overall collective mission, in my opinion. Like for instance, like, and I don't want to be like call names here or be hard, but like for instance, like I kind of had a little beef with somebody in the Discord who is a hardcore flat earther, and I'm big into ufology and ETs, and I'm really like, this is a really sharp guy. He's well read, but he's just not even willing to admit any of the flaws in his logic or his arguments, and he go out into a whole thread with another member, and I'm like, he could be such a valuable asset to help with like disclosure and waking people up and just being a part of, or just generally like, these other really core missions. But it's like, forgive them for the no, it's all love. Don't be like condescending or patronizing or act like you're better than them. You've been there in your own way. At one point, I was Mr. Gordon Gecko finance, just the, very cliche selfish behavior. And like, if I looked at myself in that moment, I'd be like, yeah, you're being a douche. Like, so it's all love and always like just give them that balance, that space now more than ever where it's so quick to be like, just cancel them, say they fucking suck. I just had something happen on the comments that was beautiful where like he made a comment on the recent Waking Infinity about critical thinking and he was just really railing it and it was ironic. I said, I'm like, you realize he's saying critical thinking's good and the guy thought he was saying critical thinking's bad because he didn't understand the nuance of the title and how Ben approached it and and then he's like, oh, he said something kind of mean, and then he came back like a few hours later and was like, and I rarely actually comment. I'm very much of the Rogan mentality of like just post and drop because I'm already so busy with Ben stuff. Like just post it and drop. It's especially as things start to get bigger and bigger, it's going to become impossible to see all comments, but important ones I try to. So he comes back. He's like, oh, sorry, man. I chilled out. I smoked some weed, and you're right. And I realized it was wrong. And I'm like, it's all good. It's much love. Like, cannabis is a hell of a plant. And like, remember, they want us divided. That's the key thing is the thing they fear most is us unified, loving, educated, ready to go out and kick ass, build beautiful things, work together, make sweet love, like whoever you want to do it with, fuck it. So like all the nuance, all the things that get us caught up in the bullshit of these subtle things that like become so obvious to me. Of like it's like at times I want to be like just shake people and be like, look, dude, there's such a bigger thing we can focus on, and why are we fighting over these little nuanced things? This is exactly what they want. And then at times I've got to be like, nope, it's all love. They got to experience this. Maybe like I can only control my own actions, and and yeah, and so getting back to the extraterrestrial topic, I got into finance, but like I understand like it is a process to start really accepting these larger notions, like a secret space program. It was, and that's how I designed the Awakened Media, the Awakened Space playlist. I curated and spent a lot of time starting with beginner, basically like college, like a curriculum, beginner levels content on the space, like how big space is. Neil deGrasse talking about it, like just basic stuff. And then by the time you get to the end, it's like calculus level, heavy duty because I get it. Like we do have to there is a certain process for how humans integrate technology or information. You can't just jump right to calculus. So it's the same with any topic. You have to have a certain approach or curriculum. I think wherever you're at, you could jump in already being at a higher level. But yeah. So like that's why I'll try to like gauge. Like for instance, we're talking to you. Like how much have you gotten into? Okay, this is what I recommend would probably be the next thing to check out. And that's how I kind of approach anybody who's into it.
So, as far as the alien discussion, though, I mean, again, I want to just reiterate that the reason that I'm even bringing this up is because $21 trillion is truly enough to build a what Richard Dolan has called an off-planet civilization. Um, what is, I mean, obviously it's all theoretical, but what do you think is going on as far as, are there multiple races? I mean, so let's just dive all the way in, right? So there's supposedly like insectoids and reptilians and grays. Like, what the fuck is really going on when it comes to these different species? And then there was the Majestic 12. There was a few other races. I think there was like 5 races in that Majestic 12 document that was heavily redacted but had gotten released.
Yeah.
Go into that a little bit.
Yeah, so that's some pretty heavy level stuff. I mean, bottom line first, like obviously the big talk right now is David Fravor, all this released naval footage, and people first believing, okay, they've acknowledged UFOs exist and are real, the Navy, all this, and then now people are still like arguing, is it just covert technology? And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be condescending, but like I've just looked at every argument and just none of it stands up to be like, you can't explain to me that this is some sophisticated drone that can go tens of thousands of miles an hour, blink in and out of points in space and time, and just literally disappear, not be on radar, jam radar, just like so many things where I'm just like, much love. I'm not trying to have confirmation bias here, but like that just doesn't hold up logically. And a lot of people, I think, as part of it is just they don't want to identify or accept that this is real, because then they're like that weird alien guy. Like that's a big part of all this is like, and I had to do this too, is like the ridicule factor is a big part of the program, essentially, from going back to Roswell. They realized they had to ridicule people, use cinema and these things to make it seem less credible, and it works. I mean, it does. I mean, bottom line, it does work. And so look at the results. So that's why the fact that the New York Times finally said it, so many people are like, oh well, the Times says it, now I can accept it. And I'm like, okay,
or 60 minutes, right?
Fine. It's kind of weak, but whatever, I'll take it. And
but then there's the whole other side of again, the word conspiracy can be polarizing, but this whole truther community, or whatever you want to call us, there's those people that are saying, oh well, if 60 Minutes and the New York Times and stuff, if they're talking about it, then there's some other deception at play here.
That's a good point. Look, I'm not trying to look. All right, look, I love the idea of a steel man argument versus the straw man is just your way to dismiss fucking people, and that's rude. Steel man, I think Brett Weinstein's somebody in the intellectual dark web coined it. It's, or whoever, but it's you hold up the person's best argument, right? And so like that is a strong point, but I think the reason they're doing this, the best logical answer I've come to is it is getting so overwhelming with the data and the evidence and the Navy footage and credible military pilots and people coming forward and getting on big platforms like Rogan, Lex Fridman, those kind of people. They're like, look, we got to just start controlling the narrative. This is getting overwhelming. We got to control the narrative. We got to create a space force, which, Trump, whoever was in office was going to get space force, in my opinion. And I worked with a guy who was an ex-Marine who was high up. And I was like, yeah, like these things don't happen overnight. This was years in planning. So it probably didn't matter who the president was at the time. And so they are setting us up to be like, yeah, okay, there might be some intelligent life out there. So now it's cool to say that we have this more space, higher tech stuff, slowly drip in these technologies and these things so that it seems like they haven't been lying and bullshitting us for all these years. Like they're doing whatever. This is called damage control, basically. They're trying to control the narrative, damage control, PR, wag the tail. This is what they do and everything else. And I think, yeah, they're using 60 Minutes in those outlets because those are an extension of, look into Operation Mockingbird of how they control the narrative. So, that doesn't mean though, like for me, it's like, okay, fine. Like they're going to have to tell that. But like, I also realize like, especially with independent media and the internet now, like their ability to control a narrative is getting a lot worse, a lot more difficult. So
and Ben talks about this. I've heard him talk about like the paradox of, when you're in an argument with somebody, even if civil or respectful argument, and you provide a source and they discredit the source immediately, but then you give them one of their sources, right? New York Times or 60 Minutes, and it's like, well, you're using a source that you're against. Like, yeah, exactly. Because our side, if you want to put sides to it, we're the type that are very skeptical of the New York Times and 60 Minutes. So then when we hold the 60 Minutes interviews or New York Times up as this is here's your proof. Well, then it's like, well, you're the one that said New York Times is incredible. You know what I mean? It's like you're fucking stuck in that paradox.
I find attend the hardest, but the best approach is to get them to think it's their own idea. This idea of inception. Because a lot of times I'm all about how do we get people to let their guard down? How do we get them to just like accept this? There's subtle ways to do it, maybe on a rooftop when people are more chill, you know, depending on the, like, once again, read your audience. That's a big part of this. But like, we are so ingrained, going back to our roots and looking at, you know, books like Sapiens. We are tribal creatures. This idea of in groups and out groups, look at social studies and these things. It's always been a thing for survival reasons, but now it's been exploited. And I'm kind of at the opinion, I'm like, fine, like, people are gonna be tribal, then let's make our tribe like sort of like how I think Russell and other people like Rogan, especially like Russell, are approaching. Is like, then let's make our tribe like an extremely loving one, that's educated, that's critical thinking, that's open to diverse thought. You know, like, that's the kind of tribe I want to be part of. If we're going to be so ingrained to our tribalism, then fine, that. And then once we're in that tribe, then let's work on maybe like not being so tribal in general, or like, you know. But once you're in that tribe, I mean, if it's a very critical thinking tribe, then it's more of like a network. Then it's more of like independent. I love this idea of interdependence, right? So my idea is just basically in a community of interdependent thought thinkers. I mean, and I think that's the next, get real heady, that's the next evolution for humanity and for any advanced species. I think we need to start getting to these points of really seeing the systemic design and these ways of we approach it in a much more just really understanding like what works and going purely based off that. And a key part of that is you have to have all the facts. You have to know really what's going on. You have to know what you have at your disposal to design the best system. And right now we're getting like 30-40% of the real supply, you know, whatever, I'm speculating here, but like, we're getting a very limited amount of what we can work with. And then it's, the design itself is not even being controlled, obviously, by the people who really have the best interests of the masses for the most part, right? So it's a combination of factors, but once you understand it, that's how you know, Sun Tzu, know thy enemy kind of thing. And I was sort of try to send him love, even to like dark artists like Cheney or somebody, but like, you got to know your enemy. So that's where like Ben and I really like, and that was something he and I really bonded over. I remember at Gaia was like, some people were very rosy red glasses at Gaia, and just everything was like, I had one of my best buddies who I love, but he was very like, man, I don't want to even be around that negative energy or resonance, because it's just not even, I don't want to associate or have it around me. And I'm like, all right, like, he was very much the hermit approach, and just like, I'm like, that's fine, and that's your choice, and you can do that. And he really did, like, he was the hermit. He was beautiful at being the hermit. He was a very loving space if you were cool with him. But like, I was very much like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm gonna go into the dark, and I'm gonna rage against the machine in a very loving way, and like a love warrior. And Ben, you're fucking down too. You can sense that too. Like, we'll go front line on this, and to a degree, like, I'm also like, I want to live. You know, there's times where like, as things grow, like, how hard and pain on to go, and like, you have to. This has to be a leaderless, loving, nonviolent revolution. You know, it has to be based on you know, more ideology and design and spirituality and all the things that people, you know, you're hearing the same things for a reason. You know, I think there's bigger things at work. You know, you're hearing it in different words or perspectives, but it's all similar premises. Similar, you know, whether it's Brand saying it from a more spiritual angle, or Brogan saying it from a more sort of pragmatic angle, or Ben saying it from a more of, you know, mixture of both. It's happening, you know, but there's no guarantees. You know, I do believe in free will, and you know, I think in every moment there's infinite possibility, but the probability of certain things happening, I think, are strengthened by certain actions and catalysts on your own and others. And you know, I won't even speculate on like the metaphysics of how the universe actually works. But I think ETs and all this stuff, man, like, I think they're on this level. I mean, they have to be, if you're looking at the tech they're using, or the craft and what the abilities it's showing. They understand the ability that all points in space and time are connected, and these craft are able to blink in and out of space and time, or phase in and out, shift, essentially density, vibration, frequency. As Nikolai Tesla pointed out, that's the key to understanding it all. These ETs have understood, in my opinion, these things to such an advanced degree that when they look at us, yeah, we look very probably primitive, barbaric, you know, whatever term, but like, we're type 0 species, like, and our arrogance is overwhelming, though, you know. So I think a lot of people just need to drop the arrogance and just say, hey, maybe we're not the smartest kids on the block, and it's a big freaking universe. Maybe somebody figured this out in the 3.4 billion years the universe has been alive ahead of us, and has the ability to jump across points in space and time in the universe a lot easier than using fossil fuels. I mean, to me, that when you really just start to break it down like that, it doesn't seem that radical. And I think the other big thing for a lot of people is like, okay, well, if they're here, bro, why aren't they landing on the White House? And why aren't they just like coming up and be like, what's up? We're here, peace. Like, once again, like, if you're that advanced, in my opinion, and Dolan talks about this and others, like, you would also be advanced in every other regard in your society if you're a benevolent species in particular. Philosophically, think about everything we do to like the nth degree. Not maybe everything. Like, I think comedy and satire is something we really are fucking beautiful at. I think that's a unique human thing. Like, I think there's some unique things to us for sure, but like, when it comes to like raw tech, like, yeah, we're probably super fucking primitive to these things that are made without any welds or seams. When you hear about the design and Lazar and others, like, these things, like, yeah, it's weldless, it's integrated with consciousness. It's just like, yeah, it can fly tens of thousands. Like, okay, well, like, yeah, how close are we doing that? Yeah, like, so you extrapolate, you correlate, well, if they're that advanced technologically, then other things might be. And at the same time, there might be some weird crudeness to them, like this idea the Greys are just basically pretty emotionless. They're not to get too weird, but like when experiencers talk about this, like, they're talking telepathically, but they're saying like, why are you screaming? Why are you so freaked out? They don't understand, for us, why that's scary. And so they are just so like, that's a human thing to a certain degree, this idea of empathy. So like, and other ones, apparently other beings can be extremely empathetic, different, more advanced species apparently. So every species is unique, and a culture, just like there's multiple cultures on this planet, there's going to be beautiful different cultures and uniqueness to every advanced species. It would just make sense, like, they wouldn't be all cookie cut. Planet Earth isn't that way. Like, why would it be different out there? So I think they probably make alliances and are smart about it, and they probably have some approach to primitive species. And now I know I'm sounding like a Star Trek episode, but like, I don't think Gene Roddenberry was just talking out of his ass. I think whatever happened, downloads, or he knew somebody, whatever. But like, it is what it is. Like, when I and that's why I love that show, and a lot of those types, like Stargate, I'm really into right now, because like, I realize like from my research, a lot of this lines up, and these guys know some stuff. They're showing every episode of Stargate at Cheyenne Mountain in the bottom of it, where a lot of things have happened. So for me, I just think when you really start to look at these things deeply and honestly, I'm at a point now where I had to look at these things this seriously, because I was afraid of the ridicule. Full stop. Like, I was afraid of my friends starting to look at me weird. I used to be a lot more concerned about the opinions of others. And I said, you know what, like, this is too over. It got to a point, where it's just like, this is too overwhelming to not just say something's going on here. And then once I kind of just leaned into it and kept going more and more, I embraced it. And now I love it. And now, like, now my friends know, like, I'm the guy they can talk to if they start to like be like, hey man, like, so I just saw this New York Times thing, and like, yeah, I wanted to rehash it. Like, it's pretty weird. Like, you're kind of right. Like, I'm like, all right, what else? Let's go, man. Welcome to the party, brother. Like, but like, yeah, like, so if you build it, they will come, I guess, that kind of thing.
Hell yeah. Yeah, definitely want to get more into the different species and like what as far as like the personality types. But a few things that you just touched on. One, movies. I feel like Hollywood is genius at dripping truth out in ways that don't hit people too hard, like WALL-E, for example.
WALL-E.
But you can think of just so many different movies.
Well, a lot of them, when it comes to ETs, a lot of them are very much negative, right? So 95% of most, Independence Day, blowing up the world, alien, murdering you, like, a lot of it, you think about it, yeah, it's all pretty negative. You get like ET, and you get like Close Encounters. You get like one or two, actually some of the best ones, Spielberg, like, incredible ones. But most of it's negative, and I think this is also part of the media operation when it comes to all this stuff. They talk about it in Majestic 12, is we have to create systems of discrediting this, from media to journalism to this. So it's laid out there, and then when you see it, it's like, well, that's just some crazy conspiracy. It's kind of weird how much it lines up with that. So yeah, like, that's part of what's Hollywood's role. Just like part of the media is to get us into wars. You know, it's part of it is to make us afraid of these things. I'm not naive. I think there are some negative, nasty guys out in the universe, but I think overwhelming the data is they're mostly benevolent. They're mostly positive. If it was a really nasty, authoritative, like badass one, they'd already, you know, show up and just be murking and destroying the planet, right? What we're seeing is indirect content, brief encounters, blinks in and out. I had a really powerful physical encounter when I did a C5 in a group when I was working at Gaia, and you know, that was one of the things that just like blew my mind when you actually have a craft powering up over you 3 times, going right over us. You know, I hit it with the laser. Like those things just like it changes the game. It takes it from theoretical to like I'm experiencing something that I know for sure what is an asteroid. You know, I know all the I'm like this is a serious heavy duty sighting with a group of people that we helped initiate, and it was life changing. You know, no doubt. And I had another one that was more kind of coincidental, but like that one was like wow, because we helped initiate this. Like it was powerful. And yeah, I mean,
You think
yeah.
our governments or our you know, whatever you want to call these gatekeepers, do you think they're like the do you think it's like psychological projection? Like they're the evil ones, so they project like their evil habits onto these aliens that are actually trying to help us? You think there's a little bit of that
I
going
think a
on?
lot of it's fear. Yeah, I think a lot of it is fear and paranoia. I think a lot of it is they don't understand it and they fear it. That's the sort of classic first fight for a lot of these military type minded people is fight, not flight. It's fight. Okay, there's a threat that's unknown. We got to fight it. And they made that decision early on because they felt if they told the American people that there was this threat that they had no way to that was so more advanced and no way that not a threat, but you know their whole role, their whole identity would be crushed. You know, they would feel useless. They'd feel it's like a man feeling infertile almost. You know, to that point, like they would feel so neutered, like, and that's how I think they still feel like it's to feel so helpless if these things wanted to attack us, because in their mind, there's probably more fear. Like at any point, we know how advanced they are. Clearly, like they could wipe us out, sir. Like there's so much fear and paranoia, I'm sure, around this, and I'm sure even if you don't feel that way, that's for malevolent people who want control and power, any sort of like hawkish type person, that's the angle, that's the narrative you're going to push within the deep state. And that's what you're going to associate with. And you're going to associate people in banking and finance and defense contracting and whatever arm you need to further your agenda, metallurgy, chemistry, Battelle Memorial Laboratories, where they store most of these goods, Los Alamos, all these things are managed by Battelle. So like, if you really understand how they do it and how they get around FOIA using private companies so they can't be FOIA requested. Like people are like, well, how do they keep it secret if it's so much going on? I'm like, let me explain it to you. And by the way, have you heard of the Manhattan Project? Over 40 to 70,000 people worked on that. Nobody knew about it till afterwards. Like compartmentalization actually is pretty fucking effective when it comes to national security. And when you hear leaks and stuff, when it comes to mainstream media, that's done on purpose to fit a narrative most of the time. A CNN analyst talked to a random, intelligence official. Like, oh wow, it just happens to line up so nice with getting us into another war. Like so people, part of it is though people don't want to believe that there's that much corruption and evil and people will stoop to that level. But like, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm much love, but like, does that justify us being naive to it?
I couldn't agree with you more on that point. Yeah.
But the types, though, I mean, look, as far as personalities and like that would all be speculating from what Dolan talks about. Like,
Well, I want you to speculate a little bit. I want to hear a little bit of that.
I mean, all right, like that's from like the more new age groups that I've maybe been involved with, and the more heady stuff of people who get into like Bashar or people who possibly have the ability to channel actual extraterrestrial entities. Because I honestly think that's the most fascinating to me. Like my dreaming in this life would be we do establish contact, and in some way I would get to somehow be a cultural or like diplomatic ambassador between our species. That would be like the ultimate dream in this life. If it doesn't happen, whatever. But like, I don't know. That's just being super open. But I honestly like there's grays, there's human looking groups like the Palladians. There are tall whites, which are taller white looking type gray like beings. There are what are calling like insectoids or praying mantis, which are beings that are very tall that look like a large praying mantis that most of these beings speak telepathically, except the human like groups. And And this is all based on meta-analysis from Richard Dolan's book and others of thousands of experiencers talking about what they describe under deep hypnosis, along with military experts, people like Travis Walton, who have been on Rogan, who have very credible stories of missing time, serious police, looking into it, all these kind of things. So these aren't just your, Uncle Joe in the woods with one tooth being like, I had an alien abduct me. These are serious case studies. And no disrespect to them, not going to be mean, but like, I get it. Like, part of this is like, you got to be, when you go hard, when you're talking about serious things, extravagant claims demand extravagant evidence. I get it. I believe it. This is an extravagant claim that there's extraterrestrials and there's different types, and I'm describing them. I get it. Like, this is me talking to your prefrontal cortex people. So, bottom line, though, the insectoids, and then the last really heavy, gnarly one is that's true, which I don't want to admit is true, but reptilians. And David Icke's one of the first original people to talk about this group. Experiencers, Dolan, people I seriously respect, say, yeah, whether you like it or not, this group exists as well. And once again, I think we live in a big universe, and from what I've heard, all these groups have good and bad within them. Mostly certain groups are more benevolent, like Palladians and human-looking ones. Reptilians apparently are more cold-blooded, pun intended, I guess, whatever. But there are some good ones too within it, apparently. So it's a big universe. Bottom line is like, well, look, they're not invading already, so clearly the benevolent guys have more power and technology to be like, no, like, you're not gonna come in and mess with this primitive species. So there's something holding back if that does exist and they wanted to currently. Or the other theory, which I think is also possibly going on, it's harder to prove, is they're doing it more covertly. So and this is what Eisenhower and people speculate on, is they have certain deep state actors, people who have access to this technology in the private and defense contracting sectors. And at one point in the government sector, like Eisenhower, made a deal with a certain group. The Greys was the group apparently he made a deal with, and we talked about it on the podcast and showed the evidence of the witness who was on the Air Force base when it happened, the photo of the guy who's seeing the craft landing, and the woman who's the daughter of him saying, yeah, he talked about it. Here's the photo. Eisenhower apparently got on this craft, had multiple meetings with the Greys, and basically said, you are allowed to, what people have all talked about, people say abduct experiencers. There's different terms, but basically take people and study them for their own. They're basically having a survival issue, is apparently the word on the street.
So human experimentation to help out their own survival.
Yeah. And the really heady next level thing that certain like people who do like past life regressions will talk about is certain people actually made an agreement before they incarnated to agree to these certain experience. That's the next even headier level thing.
Experiments, yeah.
So bottom line is, though, they if you are any species, self-preservation is critical. So for some reason, though, apparently if there's some connection to us, this is more harder speculation, obviously, then if they're connected to us somehow genetically, then that's why they use us, because it can help them because there's a certain genetic connection. So, every group has a different agenda to a certain degree. It gets harder when you get into speculation. I would say to people, like, honestly, like, the first thing, if you start to get more, like, you've got, like we said, like, there's steps to all this, but, like, a really powerful thing is if you can have a CE5, if you can actually initiate an actual craft powering up or doing a serious, powerful catalyst, like showing itself to you, that's really powerful. And that really then really, I think I would recommend that to it, because that's experiential, right? And a lot of what happens is people just read about or this, but like once you experience it, it does really change it for you. And man, like when it happens, it's weird. If something happens, like there's a connection. Like all people talk about this similar, like you feel them, there's some connection. And if they have this advanced technology to basically like walkie-talkie your consciousness, basically, because once again, like, and I'm really big into consciousness. I think this is like the most important and cutting edge thing. And I love people like Adam Curry who have companies that study consciousness that are actually creating technology, integrating consciousness. So using quantum random number generators to do all these really cool things. But essentially, like, I understand people need to see proof of concept to believe. Not all people, but a lot of people seeing is believing, like even whether you already believe it, like it will only add more confirmation. So regardless, it's going to do good to have something to show proof of concept, whether that's somebody embodying it, whether that's an actual experience, whether that's technology showing this. I think that's what they're doing. I think these beings this is part of the protocol for a primitive species, is indirect contact to certain degrees of different people to show like, hey, give you a little teaser. Here's a breadcrumb. Here's a breadcrumb. Here's a breadcrumb. Like, check us out. Like, start asking questions. Start really seriously considering this. Like, we're disarming your nukes and then we're rearming them. Like, they're fucking with us because they want us to wake up. Like, it's so obvious when you really are just like, dude, like, what are they doing this? Like, it's because they're like, wake up, silly. Like, come on, get it together. Like, stop being so arrogant and think you're the only ones here. Like, it's all a way to just kind of give us breadcrumbs to finally say like, oh, okay. And like, and get people to maybe release some things. But my opinion, and the word is that the more we wake up, the more they can interact with us. And this is once again the Star Trek thing. That's why it's so bizarre, but I love it, is like the prime directive. You know, like the more, like if you mess with a primitive species before they're ready, they will maybe worship you like gods. It will hinder them more evolutionary than actually help them constructively. It's kind of like giving a man to a fish or teaching a man to fish.
Right.
So I think they're helping us teach ourselves to become self-responsible as a collective. But yeah, it's frustrating as hell sometimes. I'm like, come on, like I want to hang out, like I'm ready, like we just gotta like, what's holding us back? Because you don't believe this.
Well, that's actually what I wanted to get into, because a couple of things that we've touched on already. You mentioned like, you know, obviously there's a better way to move around the universe than burning fossil fuels. So what is the connection between this, you know, $30 trillion missing, off-planet civilization, free energy suppression, and then advanced technology? Let's bring those two factors into the conversation, because I think that I think that that's part of the reason why they haven't revealed themselves yet, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, as far as why it's not being disclosed by these what we call deep state actors, the people who have actual access, security, and material access to these things. This is probably the biggest thing, is like the energy component, because this is a trillion plus dollar industry. I mean, not only energy, but so many of the things they could bring us would make so many industries obsolete. It would probably crumble the entire monetary system, which is why I think it's, in my opinion, the most important thing in the world. Because if we get that, and I don't know how it happens, like a part of it is like, well, for that to happen, we have to get our shit together. So like, all right, well then like, we got to get our shit together, you know, because I want that's what's driving me most. And so
access to free energy.
No, well, access to ETs.
Access to, okay.
Way in that, like I want to fly around on a spaceship, man. I want to go check out the planet, but I love Earth. But I want to hang out and say, come out, come hang out here. Like I want to go to, you know, Australia, Asia in the blink. Everyone would. I mean, come on. Like this is why we love sci-fi. We read, you know, all these incredible sci-fi books, like because it would be so freaking fun and dope. But you can't just get that until you're ready. Like you got to earn that shit. Bottom line, like and that's where I think maybe things in the past messed up, or a certain species, if they get it too fast or they're messing with tech too ahead of their time, you can kill yourself, like AKA nuclear weapons. Like
you think that's what happened with Atlantis?
Well, that's the word, and the things I've read is basically Atlantis Lemuria is basically that we had access to tech that was too sophisticated. We had people who were using it that were similar to these kind of like military, you know, hawk types here, and they were like, you know, Drew Melchizedek, and people talk about this idea of the Merkaba, but basically they were messing with some seriously heavy duty stuff when it comes to technology that might have been, you know, ripping points in space and time, and people start to draw parallels to CERN, and everything runs in cycles. And are we maybe, you know, mini bang? How you know, it's a mini Big Bang we're creating. Like, how big does that have to get to it to maybe start to get, you know, Big Bang is. But obviously these are tiny photons, and people, the quantum physics will be like, no, there's nothing dangerous. And so anyways, though, like I think
it's ironic that they're the ones saying it's nothing dangerous when they should understand quantum entanglement more than anybody.
I don't think they really do. I mean, you talk to any real hardcore quantum physicist, they're like, dude, this shit's so spooky and weird. I don't really understand what's going on. Like, and that's why there's so much controversy within that whole field of thought is, you know, it's string theory, it's this or this or this. They don't know. And that's why like experimental and practical physicists or mechanics will be like, yeah, those theoretical guys are so like annoying because it's just all theory. Like they want something hard to do an experiment. And that's why like CERN is interesting, because it's this first experimental time to really, you know, see if subatomic particles and all that. But energy, yeah, getting back to that, I mean, that is, I think, one of the most important things. Like, I think the bottom line is that, yeah, when you listen to people like Lazar, or you see these different craft and what they're doing, it's clearly using some form of energy that allows them to not be affected by gravitational forces, allows them to go at extremely high speeds, allows them to blink in and out of space and time, essentially, or just travel extremely fast. So I think different craft are showing different levels of advancement, but bottom line is they're all able to traverse a pretty large amount of the galaxy. And certain ones, have like a Tesla, and certain ones might have a Ford Model T in their, version. But the bottom line is like, the first huge step for any species is having the ability to travel very large distances very easily. I mean, if we just keep staying and just trying to go to Mars and these things that are just like, that is so rudimentary that like we could be so ahead of this. I think we're being so limited, and I don't know.
I mean, we did
Elon
that
and these
50
guys,
years ago. I mean, look at how
yeah,
much every other aspect of technology has advanced in that time frame.
right. I mean, you look at Elon and Branson and Bezos and all these guys getting into the space race in this private sector, but like they're still using, I think, the materials that they only have available at the public sector. I mean, when you look at people like Lockheed Martin, blank on his name, Skunkworks guy, saying we now have the ability to take ET home. I do think there are covert operations, and I think that's a big part of where this money's going to develop, trying to create these new designs and systems. They're reverse engineering and trying to create it. I mean, why else not? I mean, it would make total sense. If you're the general, you decide to suppress it after Roswell, you're saying, okay, find out everything you know about it, reverse engineer it, and then build me one of those because I want to be able to fight these guys. And I think also they don't know what the hell they're looking at. From everything Lazar and other people said, is like, it's like dropping a nuclear weapon or a phone back 1,000 years ago. How would they handle that? They would just like, so for us, it's the same thing. And certain people are probably dying from it. All these strange stories come out of things in deep underground military bases between certain clashes where they're actually working with ETs. And like, so like, there's some weird stuff I think going on of like, to a certain degree, like if the Eisenhower, and I think it did really happen from all the data I've done, like if that did really happen, we are exchanging technology to a certain degree. And that means there's some level of communication with them. Where it gets weird and fuzzy is like, who's really in control of that tech? Who's really in control of the narrative? How much are they listening to the advanced beings? Are the beings working with one group that's good? Or is another group a rogue group? Like you get into all these things, and that's where some people will then attach on to like certain whistleblowers in the space who I found you got to be careful, because there are some people who will basically bullshit and makes things up to feed a more personal agenda. And so like this stuff is, sci-fi becomes reality, but like that means there's going to be some people who are maybe going to take advantage of that, sexy sensationalist narrative too.
Yeah.
So that's a part of this other whole part of the field.
Yeah. I definitely feel in this truth community that there's a lot of not even purposefully bad actors, but just people that for a lack of a better word, they're misguided.
They're narcissistic. I mean, to put it very bluntly, I worked with some of them at Gaia, and it's just like working with people and when I worked in Hollywood, certain people, not everyone, I worked with some people I love, and I don't even want to name names here, but like you have characters that some are very narcissistic, just like in Hollywood, and this is also an industry to a certain degree. I get it, but for me, I get the media component's important, but I'm also like, I guess you could say an ET activist, so I, yeah, unfortunately it is what it is, but some people will see an opportunity for their career, even if that means possibly losing credibility and shooting themselves in the foot in the process, unfortunately. But it is what it is. That's their lesson they got to learn. Much love. Hopefully they learn it. But just like CNN or somebody, they'll double down too if they're strong enough in their narcissism and I'm right, and so.
Yeah, convince yourself of your own lie, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard the term extended intelligence?
Well, the closest thing I can think of to that is like morphic resonance, or like what Rupert Sheldrake talks about. This idea of like the collective intelligence and how like the 100 monkey effect, or like when one group of animals can learn something, then the other group across the world could learn it at the same time without having any connection. That's what comes to my mind close. I don't know if that's what that is defined as.
Well, that's a really interesting concept anyway. That's that 100th monkey effect, and like when an inventor invents something and then like an inventor on another continent invents the same thing like within a week without any shared information. That is crazy. Extended intelligence is basically, it's almost like a hybridization of artificial intelligence and this whole alien, extraterrestrial. You merge them together in the sense that, like, well, you see how much our technology has advanced since Roswell. So this is kind of the idea that technology itself, or artificial intelligence, is not actually artificial at all, and that it is that being. Because we personify everything, we anthropomorphize everything, and like this technology is actually the UFO itself is the thing that's alive.
Right.
Have you heard of this idea?
Yeah.
Like
No,
the technology is actually
yeah.
controlling the
And
extraterrestrials.
for sure, that's a really cool, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a really cool thing that I found in my research, is that the craft itself has a consciousness, essentially.
Right.
And so, I mean, this idea of general AI and stuff, I think that is possible. And I don't know if we've reached, I'm for sure, I don't think we've reached it yet, and maybe in covert areas, but we don't have general AI, or this idea of like a self-aware AI. But I think it's half organic, half like self-aware technology. That's kind of what people describe. And once again, man, we live in a really big universe. There's probably stuff that's just, purely organic. That's a craft they use, that they sync, like an avatar riding a creature. They just sink in almost consciously. But I think there's some that's probably hybrid tech, hybrid organic, um, and the craft itself develops a consciousness. It's kind of these ideas in Star Trek or any sci-fi of like, yeah, the ship becomes alive. And I think, look, man, everything is one, right? In my opinion, everything is, energy. It's all, it's never created or destroyed. Ultimately, it's just transferred. I think like it gets weird and heady when like you start thinking about like this idea of AI and like how are we going to approach it in the future. Like, the more intelligent and aware it gets, and the more it gets that level of general AI, like the more we have to start I think the best way to approach it is treating it like a child, essentially like a new life form we're creating, and then be loving and good supporting parents and use it the right way. But like, right now, some parents are just some radically abusive, angry soccer dads or football, just like like they don't care, like, and it sounds super abstract and crazy to think like, what are you talking about? This is just a tool and this is deterministic. And I know people super heavy and heady in that AI and tech space that I've met and worked with, and like, yes, I think that's definitely true from when you look at it, but like when you really look into like how computer learning is working, and I was actually like helping a YouTuber tech guy like do his show, and like part of that, I was just researching so much of this seriously heavy cutting edge machine learning, how it teaches itself using thousands, millions of simulations at once, and just like understanding like, oh my God, I get how it's exponentially growing, and how if it has this much food or data to use, it's going to grow fast. It's like a life form, like it's germinating. And the whole debate is like, is there singularity? Will it reach general AI? I mean, when you look into ETs in that space, like I think they've already kind of proven to a certain degree that maybe, yeah. I mean, I'm honestly, this is me coming to this realization now, but like that is probably pretty strongly possible. The evidence points towards that you can reach that general AI, have a craft that has it, and then sync with it. But I think that's part of what they're afraid of, is like, this is serious power. Use it correctly. Create beautiful, loving, tech, quasi-tech beings, and then you can have some amazing, cool relationship and travel the universe with them. But like, don't create some Skynet shit that's going to kill you. So like, it's a tool. We're the creators, we're the fathers and mothers of it, but like, parent it well. I mean, that's just what's kind of coming to me. Like, so like, bottom line, like, I don't think these are the surfer approach. These are big waves that are coming. We got to ride them and ride them the right way. It's inevitable. You can scream and shout, but like, unless there's some sort of catalytic catastrophic thing, these things are happening. So like, let's harness them, aikido them, and use them to the best we can as tools. And a big part of that is like, yeah, accountability and transparency, and calling out these people who are the mothers and fathers currently, the creators. However that needs to happen. Through regulation, open source coding. Show us the code. I don't know exactly. It gets trickier, but I think like, yeah, I mean. It is disconcerting to think about who gets to call the shots on these, just like a lot of things. That's one of the things where like the people it's harder. We don't have as much power. Like media, we're starting to really make a dent, but like big tech, like fuck, like I mean, you're seeing new alternatives like Rumble and Minds and things that I really love and try to support, and we put content on. But like the big reason these things have power is because they just have a sheer market share of network users. Their tech isn't that amazing at this point. It's just that they have so many users. So I guess the key is like getting users to go to new platforms, and those platforms being good enough and having good enough content to attract people. You know what attracts people to platforms? Good content. I mean, TikTok blew up. What attracts people there? Like, it's not great. I don't use TikTok. I've looked at it. I've looked at maybe putting some stuff on Ben, but it's like you can only do like 3-minute videos. I don't feel like you're gonna get great content that short. It's just really addictive, and the algorithm is designed to like totally like hack
haven't
the
gotten into
dopamine mine.
TikTok yet. Yeah.
But I'm like, at the same time, it's got a massive like reach. Should we maybe throw out some short blips? I don't know. You know, I'm not against, you know, any means necessary, I guess. But yeah, so like I think there's solutions. I'm at such at a stage in my point on my journey where it's all about implementation. How do we get there's solutions all exist? How do we get them implemented? And I'm like getting back to like direct action. I'm big on direct action now. The whole concept behind that is like you don't really give a fuck what the government thinks. It doesn't mean you're irresponsible. It doesn't mean you're stupid. But it's like, for instance, Gandhi's Salt March was direct action. Dr. King's marches were direct action. It's versus civil disobedience. It's just standing outside and yelling, "Hey, you suck, you suck, you suck." Like let's just take action in ways to show proof of concept, and that can happen in a lot of ways. You know, I'm all the above kind of person. If you want to do it through politics, fine. Let's find the best ways for politics. If you want to do it through the private sector and just the people as a private business or just protests and mass movements, let's use that. Use everything at our disposal. Why not? Like, why limit ourselves? So if you're more vibing and feeling this approach or this way to approach it, then use that. I kind of have my hands in multiple things. You know, I think that's the most fulfilling. But the solutions are there. The key is just implementation, and implementation really the best way to get things implemented is community, is strength in numbers.
Right.
It's always been the way. The more power we have in the numbers, the better. The less they can pull off what they're doing, and that's what they know. I mean, this is the solution. And Ben's been asked this. It's so we got to create communities and we got to connect. But like that's why I'm
from the scene from A Bug's Life where he's like, "It's not about food, it's about control. If they come together, you know." I forget exactly how it goes, but like that's pretty much it, right there.
Powerful messages in Pixar, and I love a lot of those movies. Like, but it's so true, and it's like that analogy is spot on. Of like the grasshoppers just control what are they, ladybugs? I forget what they were. Ants. No, it's ants, right? Or yeah. But it's all based on like, you know, and that's shattering. And I know that's uncomfortable for people, but that is a good thing. But it's shattering from multiple angles, you know, and you're going to have things you resonate more with. You know, I obviously have my things you can tell I resonate with, but that's why I always try to like, I'm really, really mindful now to be like, look, whether I'm talking to a friend or family or somebody on YouTube or Discord or whatever, like, is this leading towards division or is this leading towards unity? Like, is this leading towards more of what they want, divide and conquer, or is this leading towards community and unity and building more bridge? And even if we disagree, it's like, look, man, like we may disagree, but much love, like best of luck on your journey. Like, but that doesn't mean like I'm also just gonna like you have to also be very mindful like your time and energy of like who's ready to listen and where are they really coming from and are they even trying to have a conversation or dialogue? And if they're not, then like usually it's best to be like, all right, I'm good. I'm gonna step away until you're maybe to have a real dialogue. So once again, know your audience and all that, but like we don't need the entire world to fucking agree and get on board. Once we have enough, you know, and this was the whole mission of Gaia and still is like once you get a large enough amount of people together in community,
the 100th monkey.
Yeah, I mean the propeller will shift the paradigm. The propeller will shift the ship, right? So that's the key. Is they're just afraid of enough people, enough percentage of the population getting enough awake enough, leaving the matrix enough, really starting to say there are real systems designed. That's why they're terrified of Rogan and Brand. They're terrified of these guys. Oh my God, they're talking with nuance and they're being empathetic and loving and funny and they're talking about real serious things that actually are important and they're doing it in a way that's actually authentic and digestible. That is the formula to break their bullshit and system. And that's why they have a massive following and are blowing up because people are like, yes, this is refreshing. This is what's up. This is what I want. and that's always going to be the case, that kind of content for sure. But like the key is then like working within their systems of control. Like YouTube will go, Ben, we got to be mindful of what we say. And like, so it is what it is. But like, so that's the delicate part of it. That's where it's like, and Brand, like, that's why I love it. Like he's got 4 million and growing. Like, I love seeing people like that blowing up, because it is so important and helps shift that community and that collective. And it doesn't have to necessarily be, it can be a decentralized movement. It can be a decentralized community. We can create small networks of people to come together, moving and living closer, and for sure do that physical. But like at the same time, use the tools of the internet and the online metaverse, use the defragmented, decentralized ability that it provides to also have a community and network that. I'm big on, smarter, not harder, connect networks, connect with like-minded people. That's the next stage, down the line with me and Ben, is like, excuse me, trying to put on events or like, festivals, a thing with like-minded people, speakers, music, comedians, and trying to do more of like showing proof of concept, living it. And then, it already exists, and these transformation festivals are, attend them, so like, I do get a lot of hope and optimism for what's possible, and when I do see how these tools can be used the right way. But we are in the middle of a very volatile time. Nobody can deny that. We are experiencing extreme volatility. The purging is at a climax in a lot of ways for the purging of the collective, and that's uncomfortable. That's making people give them a lot of anxiety and fear if they're not prepared. And that's okay, and we got to have love for them and hold space. And maybe they might pass and go on and still feel that way, and that is what it is, But what you can control, what you can do, that is, you can only lead a horse to water. You can only control your own thoughts and actions. And I'm optimistic. I'm very optimistic at the end of the day, but I'm not naive to like, this is a serious challenge we've got. This is a real opponent. We've got to collectively form a pretty badass community that's going to be able to take on this guy, because this is not these people have had a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of years to master their dark arts, and we're going against fucking Voldemort. I'll say his name. So yeah, I'm not naive to that, and I don't, to get full heady here, like I don't feel like this is my first life where I've had to be like I got Spartan. I'm like, I will fucking, let's go. But I'm also much like self-defense. Like I'm not a confrontational type, but like, yeah, I don't like bullies, I guess.
I feel you. One piece that we haven't touched on that I feel connects to everything that we've been talking about is virtual reality, or the metaverse. Is this something that you feel can be used like many other technologies as a tool to advance love and a more beautiful world, as Charles Eisenstein might say? Or do you think that virtual reality is really just not the way to go? Or you are more like Alison McDowell when it comes to the metaverse?
Right. So I guess, I'm on the camp of like, look, once again, I try to be very much a pragmatist at times, but I also get really heady. Can get really heady, as you can tell. I like to balance it. But like when it comes to this, like, look, first off, this is inevitably happening. I think Allison, whoever is in whatever camp you're in, like, I think they would agree, like, this is definitely happening to it. Like, unless like, there's some really strong catalysts that all indications don't, show up for me. That's something like extremely random, like more and more money, resources, and the market share and all the R&D, like it's happening with technology. It's being built for many reasons, but the biggest driver is profit, and you say profit and control are pretty hand in hand. Now, that being said, I get why, like, if you extrapolate out, if I was like forecasting here, like, yeah, because the power and the control and the money and the people who run this, they're the ones in charge, and their agenda is going to be to use this and weaponize it. That can be very scary. But that doesn't, to me, inherently mean that it's necessarily bad, right? It's just a tool. It's the people wielding it are wielding it like a sword or a gun, right? We have thumbs. Do you use them to fight wars, or do you use them to build houses and beautiful things and make love?
Well, I think
right?
I think that Allison might say, like, how could you even use, like, I think her perspective might be like, isn't that just an escape from what we could
right now
be
for instance,
making
right now
beautiful?
right now, like, it was tough for me to drive and go to your spot and do an in-person podcast. So we're using this beautiful technology to connect and have a more, it's not obviously face-to-face, but it allows for a certain level of connection that it is, I think, a little bit better than just a phone call, you know? And so it's not perfect. I get there's flaws, and I'm a huge proponent. Yeah, you got to balance it. You gotta step away from it. You got to walk with your bare feet and all that. But I don't think it's inherently evil, if that's sort of the premise we're going off here. I don't think technology is inherently evil. This being said, and I can point to...
I agree with you there. I think the metaverse is taking I think it's another iteration of technology, and it's kind of branching in a way that
Well, we don't know what it is yet. I mean, Metaverse
yeah.
is still very new. I mean, that's where, like, you got to be honest when you're like, all right, I'm speculating here, or like
right,
stating
exactly.
fact.
Of course, yes.
Right. So Metaverse, I mean, what I've seen from the Metaverse is super fucking crude and looks really bad. And I'm like, I don't have any urge to go on the Metaverse because it still looks like 1990s like VR block. And I'm like, okay, until it looks like maybe Ready Player One, then it'd be more attractive. And I've used Oculus Rift. If I guess, I don't know if that's considered metaverse, but I've used Oculus Rift in some of the nicer VR, and it is really, really cool. I mean, it's really fun.
That's what I'm saying. Like the nicer virtual reality. That's what I'm referring to.
Okay.
Is that virtual reality that feels real.
But it's not a world yet, right? So the metaverse, when I looked it up, is this whole world using that tech, but the world itself is really crude. So they got to create the world. I think that's what's going on. And there's one.
But isn't that what virtual reality is simulating? It's like helping to create that world.
Yeah. So like, I mean, so the tricky thing here, I think, is if we're both agreeing that it's not inherently evil. Do you feel the metaverse is inherently evil versus, or that's different than VR?
Well, I don't personally think that anything except for conscious lies is inherently evil.
Right.
To be clear on that, but no, I mean, I just think that the way that virtual reality is being rolled out seems to me to be
the escapism element.
Escape. It seems to me to be being used as a fucking pharmaceutical drug, basically.
Right. Okay. So I get that, and that's a strong steelman argument that I think is totally right. I think my counter would be, look, you can make the same argument for drugs, any vices, basically. Drugs, alcohol, driving fast cars, adrenaline junkies, like you can get addicted to anything.
But none of those put you in a reality that is seemingly as real as this one, and you can experience emotions.
So look, I don't think so. First off, VR is extremely fun and it can be very addictive. I guess what I'm saying, right? It can be used for escapism. A lot of times it is. I think that's okay. And I'm not against like inherent, like, I think I like escapist things, but I also understand there's got to be balance and everything. Like sometimes I'll escape and watch some like unconscious stuff, mind-numbing sports.
Right.
And like
I watch sports too. Yeah,
I think that's important and healthy. If you'll get burnt out if you're only I know it. Like I've pushed myself. You'll get burnt out if you're only doing super heady, super only conscious stuff. It's beautiful, but sometimes you just gotta just enjoy. I think, in my opinion, stuff to just sort of
mindless activity.
Yeah. I mean, and so it doesn't have to be, find whatever it is for you. I'm not saying, and so, but going back to VR, I think like, yes, it can be used for escapism. And I think from the majority of it is currently, it's not really being used more for like developing empathy and teaching people about other cultures. That's sort of the next educational steps that people are looking into. But right now it's purely entertainment and purely just escapism, watching movies and playing games. Now, I think the next level and like getting more to like how can it be used for good is sort of like playing the optimist and saying how do we use this tool for good. I think VR, similar to this, could be the next evolution of just like we're doing now, having really feeling like we're in the room together. Augmented reality can teach you more about the world around you in a cool, fun way. The Pokemon Go is a beautiful example of that. Of like, yeah, it's silly, it's Pokemon and all, but like, what if that was helping teach you about your culture around you and plants and animals and understanding your environment? It doesn't mean we should become a slave to it. And I know there's like people say, well, it gets slippery, then you'll become, more integrated and biocentric, and this idea of transhumanism. I think the key is the philosophy and the ideology behind using the tool. I think that's critical. But the tool, the VR, I think can be used just like this. It can be used for good. And the metaverse can be a cool, fun escapism. But I think also we had to have public education about how this is, can be, addictive if we're not mindful about it. Create fun, educational, fun other things to do. Like, I'm also like not big on like lecturing people. Like, just provide people fun, better alternatives, and I'll also do that. Like, the reason people escape in Ready Player One is because the rest of the world was totally horrible. Like, and it slowly got more that way. And I guess I'm trying to remember the exact premise he made, but like this is already VR in a way, and it's a pretty fucking amazing VR, you know, right? So we are already players in a game. I'm playing an avatar of Gordon. It's my opinion. You know, I love the idea of like metaphor of this life is basically a game. I'm a player, the soul, whatever you want to call it, is playing the avatar of Gordon in this life, in this game. That character can die. I can play other games. I can play FIFA, Forza, other games. I'm still the same player. I get different skill sets in those different games. And so for me, like, we're just spiritual beings having a human experience. You know, we're just players having characters we can play at times. It's the whole idea of like the ego death and all these things. Like, I like to kind of put it in more like normalist, like normalized, like terms for people, I guess. But like that's the metaphor I like to use. And so the bottom line is like we're just players playing characters. We get too attached to the characters sometimes, called the ego, and then we become, you know, slaves to the game itself at times as well. But once we pass on, I think we realize, oh shit, we're just players playing characters again. And then we realize how silly it was, how, you know, upset we get over the certain things, and we feel like, oh man, that was fun though. Like I want to go back, pull me back in. My friends are still there. My mom, my former life. Like I just had a grandkid. I want to be, maybe now I can be her her mother, her father. Like when you get into past lives, like it also gets into like these different roles, and you stay around similar players. It's just like when you play games, you find friends who you like to play certain games with, and you guys click. You have synergy. I think it's a similar analogy what's going on. Once again, this is just my field of thought, and I'm a panpsychist. I believe everything's consciousness. And I think just like once you understand panpsychism truly, then the tech comes along with it. You can create tech integrating it. And I think with VR, another thing too is like we are basing everything off of what we currently know, but as things happen, evolution, there's spikes. And so like there might be a spike where like, yeah, we'll have some really cool advanced VR to a certain degree, but like once we get into like the level of the consciousness and like the ET tech, like it could be such a next level thing that we can't even think about, that is actually way more better for us, that's more integrated, that, you know, we can't even really conceptualize right now. You know, could you conceptualize this or the phone 100, 500 years ago? Like, I don't know. So we got to accept that we're currently limited based on what we currently know, and you can speculate, and that's, I think, why it's important to have dreamers and idealists. But I don't, you know, getting back to just, you know, something up here with VR, like I think once again it is a tool. I think the metaverse, I think it can be used very destructively and used very much as an escapism, but I think also in the same opposite, if we use it wisely. I mean, and I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. I think most people are going to probably, you know, like, I don't know, like teach his own, but like esports are blowing up. I love esports. Like, would you say there's a worldwide addiction to gaming going on? Like, I don't know. I know. I mean, the science doesn't support that. It's not in the whole idea of like it makes you more violent. Like, I love computer games. I also love physical sports. I see value and differences both. And to, you know, do whatever you want to do, but like, I also know that there's people in esports that it burns them out. It can be abusive, just like an athlete in physical sports. You know, you can get CTE. Like, so everything has risks and benefits. Sort of going back to VR, I think the risks right now probably outweigh more the benefit with VR if you're looking at it purely from a, I guess, escapism angle. But I think you don't have to worry about it if you've got your shit together. I mean, bottom line is like if you've got your shit together, like I love it, but like I realize I got to put that down. You know, like I need to spend some time with friends and go out and walk around. But like, so I don't want to be derogatory, but I think it's a little bit of a victim mentality to say like we're hopeless with how we use this technology. Like, no one's forcing you to buy the VR. Like, I get it. You're mad that other people might be enslaved, even though you're not doing it. But like, I mean, that's already going on in so many other ways. Like, this is just added to the list of things that's happening to people about. So yeah, I don't know. I do always try to look on the brighter side. And I'm a big tech guy. I mean, I use a lot of tech. I've gotten really good at it. But I also understand at times, yeah, like the you know, blue light, anxiety, these subtle things can affect me, and I really have to be check myself on like,
Well,
breathe, man,
given that
meditate.
given that you seem to be on the pro tech side of it, have you ever read What Technology Wants? That was a book that I believe Ben actually recommended. Kevin Kelly. Yeah, he basically makes the argument that we should readily accept cutting edge technologies, instead of having the approach of like what he considers like the Amish approach of let's not use it until it's like 1,000% proven that it's not going to destroy our community or hurt our community bonds.
Which maybe never could be proven.
Right. Instead of taking that approach, he's saying, anybody who's enthusiastic about using these cutting edge technologies, let them use it in a safe space, for a lack of a better term, until we, it's almost like his point of view is use the shit out of the cutting edge technology until we figure out what's wrong with it. Because all we're doing by being conservative with it is delaying the inevitable. Whereas if we're just, let's go straight for it, then we can figure out what's wrong with it and then deal with those problems,
Yeah, so, I mean, and that's the thing is it is inevitable. I think that's this huge premise that people really need to accept, and it's okay to accept. Like, it's been since the dawn of time, we've been evolving technology.
He even makes the argument that technology itself is an extension of evolution, and that it's the seventh kingdom. I mean,
I would strongly probably
kingdom of life.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think like it has allowed us to evolve. I think that's pretty darn hard.
Well, he says it's
not
integral. He says it's integral to evolution itself. Biological evolution, he says, led right into technological evolution, and technological evolution is nothing but an extension of biological evolution.
And to bring this back to ETs, if you ascribe at all to the ancient astronaut theory, part of what has helped us in advancement with these technological tools is extraterrestrial. So if they're benevolent and know their shit, why would they give us stuff to help us evolve technologically? Like, but they also at the same time, like, you can give us certain things, but then we can develop things to a certain extent, like I said, like nuclear weapons, where we can start abusing it too, right? So that's the whole delicate balance of like, imagine like this is what I like to do is like do a thought experiment, kind of like an Einstein, like put yourself in the position of a benevolent advanced extraterrestrial, and you just come across this really cool, unique, rich Earth planet that has this primitive, cool species that's now at this year 2021, and kind of, or just do a jump, span of history from Sumer to now. Like, you would have to do that delicately, like, getting back to our certain premises of like, do you want to hinder their evolution or be constructive towards it? How involved do you want to be in diplomatic relations? How much do you want to not be shown as far as then be observed and worship? We know this idea of cargo cults exists. It happened on Pacific Islands during the World War II, where World War II pilots would land on these islands of very primitive indigenous people. They would then leave to go bomb Japan, and the primitive people would then build straws. You can look up pictures, straws, outfits look just like the pilots. They built straw planes looking just like the planes, and they started worshiping them because they thought they were gods. Because it looks like magic. Anything advanced enough scientifically looks like magic to a primitive species. So that's a natural inclination innate within us as a species. So if you're an ET species and you're trying to teach them how to fish and not give them to them, you don't want to worship you. And obviously with religion and people that aren't as cool and level-minded as you and I, like, that would freak them out. For the majority of our history, like, these are the devil. This is fiery balls of what the hell? Like, this is this is scary. So you got to wait till they're ready. And, like, once again, putting yourself in the position, we are a beautiful, amazing, but fickle species. We are weird. We got a lot going on. It's tough, man. This is a tough assignment, like, if I was them,
Yeah, no doubt. One author, I would say, Ben has introduced or talked about several books and authors and artists that I have ended up looking into, and Alison McDowell is one that I found very intriguing. Another one that I would say is even more intriguing to me, and I think that this guy is absolutely like the genius of our generation that all of us need, is Charles Eisenstein. Have you looked into any of his work? I mean, at what depth have you looked into have you read Sacred Economics?
I haven't read that. That's actually on my book. I've got a huge book list, and I'm such a I'm an addict with podcasts, and I almost might just be like, just get it, an Audible of it, because I'm multitasking a lot. But
I understand.
I've watched a lot of his YouTube, and he basically
have you seen his Russell Brand?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're watching, because I just watched that the other day, and like, this guy is just amazing to me, and also, You know, you and I have similar backgrounds. I'm sure you have a similar background with him, where he's like a very analytically minded mathematician type of guy, and then he went, had some experiences around age 20. I would guess, that took him more in of a spiritual, philosophical direction. But yeah, I mean, if you haven't
Sacred
read
Economics is beautiful. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's a great start. I mean, I think I'm big on people who have great systemic designs. I was drawn to Zeitgeist. I've looked at a lot of these movements because there's a whole period in my life where I'm like, what is the best design for our solution, right? Is it Ubuntu? Is it Zeitgeist? Is it Sacred Economics? Is it the Venus Project? I've looked at them all. I think all have certain merits, but it's just like, we'll do whatever we can do in the moment, and if there's a great one we can implement, let's do it. But like, we don't have to have rigidity saying it only has to be this way. I think that's going to hold us back. So I've looked at a lot of those, and Charles, I think, is kind of that school of thought. He's like, sacred economics. It's this idea. It's similar to, like, I've looked a lot into conscious capitalism and benefit corporations. But I think he's a little bit more resource-based economics. I'm trying to remember if he's
it's
like
gift economy.
Gift economy. So it's very much the Burning Man mentality. That's what Burning Man used. Yeah, I mean, some people look at that and be like, that sounds like communism. What the hell? Like, so
Of course. If you don't read it, you don't know,
Yeah. So I think, yeah, you got to understand like the nuance for sure. But once again, like, it's beautiful, amazing. I'm all about like, how do we get it implemented though? Like, whether it's that or any of these, like, we got to get it implemented. Like that, like, the solutions are there. And Charles talking with people like Russell and whatever way he can get it implemented, like whether it's in the public sector, in the private, in his own way. I don't know if he's doing certain things. He's really just seems like he's now like he's just like educating people about it and bringing awareness. But we got to bring all those kind of people together and be like, yo, let's fucking implement. Let's take some of Charles stuff. Let's take some of this. Like, this is Peter, blah, blah, like, and are you guys cool to agree to disagree? Like, this is bigger than all of us. Like, we cool with that? Okay, like, let's go. So that's what needs to happen. That's what people want. The energy's there, but we need a lot of people to do that. And you got to, I was in financial advising. Like, we got to wealth management. We got to pool resources so we can pull more shit off. Yeah, money sucks. I'm not about it. I'm in this sort of Tellinger camp of like, I think the mere presence of it is pretty shitty. But it's what we have to currently use. So
I think you definitely should read Sacred Economics, because
yeah,
I don't want to get too far into it, but there's two concepts. One I'm sure you've heard of because it became popular due to Andrew Yang, universal basic income. I'm not going to go too far into that. I'm pro universal basic income. I do think that it is important how it's done, but I won't go too far into that. The other concept that was novel to me that Charles sold me on, and not only did he sell me on it, like once you read something and it's almost like a psychedelic trip. It's like the integration part of it is almost more important than the actual experience itself sometimes. And like me thinking about the implications of negative interest, have you heard this idea, negative interest?
I'm thinking from an economic point of view, but I don't think it's right. I know cumulative interest.
So
negative interest, no.
Negative interest, definitely check the book out, because, and obviously it sounds counterintuitive, pretty much our entire money system is an interest-based money system, and that might be the problem. And
slavery.
And he presents it as the problem, usury, right? And
oh yeah, it's the only time Jesus got mad. He kicked the priest charging money out of the church, man. I like to always bring that up with Christians. I'm like, hey, just telling you, your boy, the only time he got mad is when he's like, why are you charging to talk
interest
to God?
on money? Yeah,
and
exactly.
Money. Yeah, I mean, basically, yeah. And so, like, yeah, I mean, fractional reserve lending, debt-based slavery, all these terms for basically how we've yeah, I mean, yeah, but negative interest.
Negative interest. He's saying in his argument, and obviously he is going to lay it out in a much better way than I can right now. But ultimately, it comes down to every other good or service that we consider valuable loses value over time. Whether you're talking about food, livestock, crops, even services to some degree. Mm-hmm. If money obeys that, what he calls law of decay or law of decomposition, because everything on earth rots and returns to the soil, if money is the only thing where it's an insatiable desire. Every, hunger can be satisfied, sex can be satisfied, like everything else that we want and everything that money can obtain is satiable. We can satisfy it. But once we get that urge for money. That's where greed comes in.
Yeah,
Exactly right.
yeah.
And it's an insatiable,
money
you
creates
always
greed.
want more money.
Is he saying money creates greed?
Interest-based money creates greed, because when
Okay.
you have money and it's earning money just by having it, you see what I'm
Right.
saying? Then
Any
there's no
system.
incentive
Yeah.
to. What he is encouraging is cash flow. He says a strong economy is more about how many transactions are taking
Right.
place, how much
Liquidity.
money
Yeah.
is
The
flying
velocity
around,
of cash, as it's
not
called in
accumulation.
economics. Right. Yeah.
It discourages accumulation, because, in fact, it makes environmental sustainability projects profitable, because you take a billionaire who's, if they just hold that money, they're losing 5% a year. Well, they can invest in an environmental project at negative 1% a year, and they're profiting.
Yeah. 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 I mean, the whole system, when you really, it's really, you got to give them credit, because it is such a masterful, manipulative, crazy system. They have to make it so complex and so crazy to where people feel like, I don't understand it, whatever, let them do it. Right.
Right.
Like they have to do that
Chase
so
the
that,
bag.
yeah. And I remember when I was a financial
Chase that
advisor,
paper
how like,
stack.
yeah, like that was part of like, that kind of turned me off. What I didn't like, that was one of the, when I started seeing the writing, or the nasty, or the writing on the wall when I was a financial advisor, is like, I mean, I think even one of the older advisors was like, you just make it seem complicated. And I was like, you motherfucker. That's not fiduciary responsibility. That's not looking out for the client. Like, are you kidding
Yeah.
me? Make it seem complicated? Like, that is such like, what he's saying is basically like, don't have them worry about it too much, because then our job becomes obsolete.
Yeah.
And just like, it was just, but it was bigger. I realized if all these guys, a lot of them are thinking that way, then the system is designed, like they're part of such a bigger, larger, fucked up thing that they don't realize. Like they were doing it for their own personal thing, but like the system has systemically wanted them to do that, and that's where the
them
crazy.
that way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, like you either are bred that way and stay in it, or you get out. Like it is that's the part of how it works in all these industries. It's a
I was one of the Wells Fargo whistleblowers, bro. I
nice. Nice. Yeah. So I mean, so some people are like, all right, that's fucked up, but they keep the job. Or some people are like, no, like fuck this. Like this is really unethical, and I'm willing to face the consequences. But anyways, yeah, I mean, the systems, all these systems are designed in a way to incentivize unethical actions to a certain degree. Not all systems, and I know I tried really not to speak in generalizations, and I'd really like to be important and specific when we're talking about things. But if we're talking about the financial system, yeah, it's very much designed to create a certain outcome by design. A large amount of income inequality, a large amount of mass consolidation, a large amount of the most richest billionaires all being made every year are always financial hedge fund type guys. So it's old money, new financial hedge money is the main billionaires. Big tech, yeah, there's a few, but really it's finance. And yeah, we already talked big tech has issues. So these systems are designed exactly to get the outcome they get, and it's not a coincidence. And when people hear that, sometimes they think, oh, that sounds like a conspiracy theory. Like, please let me walk you through exactly what I'm referring to. But a lot of people, they don't want to accept that. And if you start to walk them through it, it's going to create obviously cognitive dissonance and make them feel uncomfortable. And I think that's what people are experiencing. But at the same time, what I see and what gives me a lot of hope is the youth and people in the millennial generation and younger in particular are really already cool with this, already like born into this like bullshit and be like, yo, I'm not a fan of this from the get-go. So why are we gonna advocate for it? No, let's find something new. I don't know, like whether it's like some are like anarchy, some are libertarian, some are like socialism. Nobody knows for sure, but they're like, this isn't working. This system's broken. And if you guys don't realize that, then like I don't know what to tell you. And I'm not trying to be ageist. I think there's a key role for elders, and a council of elders should be a big part of, I think, a new systemic design. And this whole idea of like I'm bigger on direct democracy. I think politicians should have they should be administrators, and they've never really been that, or it's gotten worse and worse. And representative democracy, I don't know. Like I'm torn on that. I'm more in the direct democracy camp. I'm big on a universality. These are the small micro steps I think we can take. But yeah, like if there's big catalysts that allow for bigger solutions to be implemented, then yeah, let's strike while the iron's hot. But that's you just got to be mindful and have it ready when it comes. So yeah, the financial system is what it is. The solutions exist, like Ethereum and Bitcoin starting to challenge it, and people like Charles are important because they do really bring a refreshing, pragmatic perspective that I think is critical to taking those first steps towards implementation. And then people would be more open to embracing more, I guess you'd call radical concepts like an Ubuntu or Zeitgeist or a Thrive movement. But whatever stage you're at, like if you're down to go, like, yeah, I'm also like, yeah, do it, take the action.
You mentioned Tellinger and Ubuntu. That's one book that's on my list that I haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah.
And you said something about money not is his solution to get rid of money altogether?
Yeah. So he wants what's called contributionism, or it's a form of resource-based economy design. Probably most similar to like a Venus project, but he's trying to create a global, worldwide. Like I'm still on his email list. It's had some ups and downs with the movement. He tried to get elected as the first Ubuntu mayor in South Africa. It didn't work out. Now he's trying to get small town mayors all over the globe, more like smaller, certain size mayors to implement Ubuntu. It's basically like, and I forget all the specifics, but it's like everyone contributes a certain amount of hours to work. There's a shared. It gets nuanced, but there's a lot that I like. There are things that, if I look back on, maybe like, I don't know if I'd design exactly that way. Contributionism, though, it's all about resource-based economies, contributing your hours. We are the ones we've been waiting for. You work on what you're passionate about. Somebody will do every type of job. Basically, he's like, even somebody will shovel the shit. He tends to find that, like, it's doable. Like it touches back on like hunter-gatherer type concepts. He's from South Africa and this sort of indigenous African culture as well. But also he has a deep understanding of the financial system and how it's corrupt. And even just that alone is worth, just like, he totally breaks down how it's from the very beginning of Sumer and Babylon, Fiat, all the way up to now, Knights Templar, like all these interesting threads. But yeah, like the mere presence of money is evil. So he's like, yeah, we get rid of money. But he also is like, the big thing, the rubber where it meets the road, is like, how do we can't just transition right away to no money. Maybe some people, that's where I remember debating with friends at Gaia. My friend Ryan, she's like, why not? Like, fuck that. Like, we could do it overnight. I'm like, Ryan, like, I love you, but like, there is a process that I think it's not realistic to think it's gonna, if there's a huge massive catalyst, like say extraterrestrials really get involved in landing, then maybe, yeah, that could happen. But for now, like, we have to have transitionary steps towards Ubuntu. And you see that happening, like I said, but like, yeah, I don't know if that's 100% going to be the best approach, but I think there's definitely some good stuff he outlines.
Hell yeah. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, man, but I have a couple more things I wanted to touch on. One is social credit system. And then the relation. So to touch on a few different things, social credit system. But you just mentioned that you're in favor of direct democracy versus a representative democracy. And I know a lot of people would say, well, the reason that there's a representative democracy instead of a direct democracy is the efficiency factor. And when it was created, that might be a good argument. But with today's technology and each one of us having a smartphone in our hands,
and Congress isn't very efficient. I mean,
right? I mean, exactly.
Whether you're left or right, how much of bills are they actually passing?
Exactly. So, I mean, I'm with you 100%. I think we could be voting on the issues on our smartphones ourselves, like everybody, right, over 18 or over 21 or whatever voting age they want to decide on.
They do it in Switzerland. I mean, like, here's how I lay it off for people in a quick, like, TLDR. You could, and Kyle Clancy's somebody who I don't agree with him on everything, but like, he's definitely been influential on me. Jimmy Dore, similar, and I think Crystal Ball. These are very much like populist left. A lot of them are big into direct democracy, and essentially, you could do it in every quarter. You could vote on major referendums, similar to what they do in Switzerland. So the politicians really just become administrators, like they always should have been, and they administrate the more day-to-day local, state, federal shit. Excuse my language. But a lot of times that is just BS. It's like, okay, should we put up a monument in this? Okay, fine. But like, did we, like, and they'll use all these stupid things, filibusters, the slide-in riders, all these terms they have. It's just, the system is very much broken. I actually just, like, officially, like, I'm getting involved more with the People's Party in Virginia and wherever I move. I voted on the state delegation. I'm totally not in the Democratic Party anymore. And I'm all about, like, direct action. Is like I'm not going to try to reform the Democratic Party. If there's a candidate like Tulsi or Bernie I liked last time that's in there, or a Yang, I'll support. But like, for the most part, People's Party now. Like, but I'll also do private sector things. All the above, right? And so I'm just trying to find things that are closer, more towards what I'm aligned. Even if it's not perfect, it's closer. But I think there's also like there's an abusive dynamic within the two-party system itself by design to its voters. I mean, when you look at the studies out of Princeton, 80% of the time or something like that, the elites or the 1% get what they want or can kill a bill, and the masses have a statistically insignificant impact on ever getting what they want, right? So like literally your vote a lot of times is pretty, I don't say completely meaningless, but it has a very, very minimal impact. Bottom line is like lobbyists, revolving door, all these things you hear is very serious and does really impact the entire system. So it's legal corruption basically at this point. Everyone knows it's an open secret, and I'm big on like getting money out of politics. I'm really big on universal policies. I hate like means testing and all these things that'll slow it up and rigidity. Just universal this, universal this. I get, okay, first thing any concerns say is, well, how do you pay for it? All right, well, like first off, we just print money out of thin air, which let's just first talk about that. And if we want to keep doing it that way. But second off, like there's a lot of ways, the more pragmatic ways, like you could put a very small tax on speculation.
Let's recover some of those accounting errors.
Yeah,
first.
yeah. You can take money from the missing military spending. You can get it from a small tax on speculation of Wall Street gambling. Basically, you could maybe actually deal with the tax avoidance, and actually start collecting taxes from a lot of major billionaires. Look, it doesn't matter how high we, it doesn't matter how high we tax them if they're always still paying an effective tax rate of like 0 to 4%. It doesn't matter. They know ways to pay basically no income tax. So it's tax avoidance that's the real issue when you look into it. Rupert Grugman or Bergman, he's great. He talks on that. And all this stuff too for you and just anyone, like I curated all this stuff on like the Awaken. That was like my core thing before in teaming with Ben. It's a collective is like Awaken Awareness, Awaken Space. Like all these type of people that I really look to and admire are in those playlists. So anything I don't touch on, or if you're more want to go in depth, that's sort of where my brain trust has gone. So, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember your initial question, but basically, like, yeah, like it's. I'm blanking now.
There was two of them. That's probably
ahead.
Tricked you a little bit. But both of them are related to technology and having a smartphone in our hand. One is direct democracy, which is what we were talking about.
Yeah,
but the other one was social credit scoring or social credit system.
I mean, that one's easy. I think nobody wants, like, anybody with a real rational mind would not be cool with social credit. I mean, like, if we look at how it is in China and we just say, like, is this the right direction we want to go? Like, I don't think more involvement in deciding when you start having people who are the gatekeepers decide what's moral or ethical or financially acute. Like, we have a FICO, we have those scores currently, and that's somewhat objective, you could argue. But social credit score, then you get into morality, then you get into ethics, then you get into things that government should not, and I think there's definitely things.
What if it's decentralized though?
Well, I haven't heard it. Like maybe I haven't heard. You're talking about a different social credit score. The one I'm thinking.
Well,
of
no,
is
I mean,
Chinese,
I know. Most of the time, when you bring up social credit scoring or a social credit system, that's what people think of, and people's minds automatically go to this is like a horrible idea. But what if? I mean, honestly, I think if it was run properly, it's probably a better money system than what we've got now.
Look, if we had an already system and design like an Ubuntu type, using that as like a way to like, hey, how are the community members doing, contributing and adding, not in like a dickish or dramatic or like that way, like, yeah, for sure. But this is the same thing with like we could have a global government that's a new world order, or we could have a Star Trek galactic federation that's badass and we're kicking it, with aliens and exploring space. Like, a global government isn't inherently bad in my mind, or decentralized global government, how you want to phrase it. Similar like the Star Trek Federation is like it's a federation of different countries that came together, and I forget how they describe it, but like I don't think that's inherently bad necessarily either. It's just what is the intent of the people in charge? Similar to social credit score, I think the intent of the Chinese is more about control and manipulation, and But if ours was run by a cool council of elders, that were doing it for looking out for the benefit.
Or I mean,
of the
even like a truly decentralized. I mean, again, kind of harking back to what we were talking about earlier. My personal view is that there is technology that is so smart that it could be considered beings, but it's so different from humans that we're shy to call it like another species or something like that. But my point of saying all of this is, I feel like there could be an overarching algorithm. I mean, it could be very similar to like cryptocurrency even, but where
Yeah,
it's
if it's open source,
decentralized
yeah,
in
if it's
open
open
source,
source,
right?
yeah, for sure. I think that's the key. Like, and that's once again where I'm like, look, like let's just first focus on open source, getting that more involved in everything, right, and transparent. Like that's the implementation step, right? And if that's for an open source social credit score or whatever. Similar with direct democracy, all these things. Something I wanted to hit on, just thought is a lot of times people push back on direct democracy because like the majority rules, well, the majority is stupid. I look, there's times where I'm like, wow, yeah, there are some people that aren't really paying attention too much. But then there's times,
Idiocracy argument, right?
right. And I do think though people will vote in their best interest. And right now, what you're seeing is pretty much the voting in the interest of the elites, and we're seeing what that gets. So why not try and give it a go with the majority? And the majority, when you look at a lot of the polls, I agree a lot of times with the majority. If it's like a really well done poll, and polls are so much huge, for sure. But like, this is the idea of the populist movement, and why I really like Breaking Points with Crystal and Cigars, because they give a perspective of populist left and populist right, but they're both populist. They're both about direct democracy. They're both more about populism. I don't know if Cigars is much about direct democracy. I think Crystal more is, but it's more about people powered solutions, giving the power to the people truly, which was always the design of the Constitution. It was supposed to be of the people, for the people, by the people, but it's obviously become of the elites, for elites, and by the elites. So I think that's what resonated with a lot of the Sanders movement. I think that's what resonated with a lot of the Trump movement. Obviously they had strong disagreements with certain things, but a lot of it was very anti-establishment. A lot of it was very populist. A lot of it was more about giving power to the people. Whether you believe that actually happened and all that is another thing, but people want that. That's the key. People are yearning for that. People realize this is broken. So if you provide that in an authentic way and you can pull it off and have the resources to really implement it, that's why I'm like, don't reinvent the wheel. I'll team up with people who I think are doing it well, like a People's Party, and see like let's okay, let's give it a shot. And then I'll do my own thing with media and whatever. But if you feel it, then get involved and find things that really are speaking to those kind of values, and they do exist. But I'm a humanist at heart. I'm a fucking humanist, and I think we are part of something greater. And I think humanity has so much to offer that we've already shown glimpses, but so much more when we're really allowed to be our fullest expression and not be enslaved by these systems of control. Everyone knows that. I think certain people feel like that's part of why they're here. Other people maybe just want to enjoy the show and be a Carlin or a Richard Pryor. That's fine, and they're beautiful. We need that. But I think the people were ready. We're at a time, we're at a precipice point where we're ready for it. But I'm like, yeah, I hope we can provide these solutions and have them, or just have them. I want people to see them, I guess. Like that's my big thing is like, hey, know they're here and know we can implement them, but like it's gonna take some tough decisions. It might take some of your old thoughts and programs and ideas and assumptions to be broken, and that's okay. Like brutal honesty, that's the big thing that Paul Chek, all the health coaches we talked to said, is like, first you just got to be brutally honest with yourself. Stop bullshitting yourself. Say, look, I love you, it's all good, you're human, you make mistakes, let's fucking move on, because there's so much opportunity, there's so much more we can thrive and have in our experience if we stop, if you really look at these assumptions with brutal honesty and unconditional love. That's when I read a book by Adi Ashanti. That was a big breakthrough that stuck through to me. So when I would realize maybe it's something about myself, like, hey, you're being selfish, but then be like loving at the same time, like, all right, you're only human, like fucking just be better. Or like this assumption about, are we only thing in the universe? And then brutally honestly look at it, and really look at it like the observer objectively, and really give it a steel man argument. And if it holds up, then just have enough love to not be, have the fear make you be afraid of being ridiculed or being a black sheep. All these things, it always comes to those crossroads when you really start doing the work. But you got to first start, everyone says be the change you want to see in the world. But people are doing the work. I mean, people are they're just helping other people do the work. We don't have to do the work alone. I think that's that's the big part of what community is there for. You don't have to do the work alone. And it's one of the most important things it provides is love and connection and strength and support to say, hey, it's okay, it might be tough, but you got this, brother. Like that was the beauty for a long time of indigenous hunter-gatherer cultures. We it takes a community to raise, or takes a village to raise a child. You know, like it's this beautiful idea of like, that's the Ubuntu part I liked from Ubuntu, is like start really, that's a part of like really understanding and connecting and seeing other people as part of you. And one is a big part of, I think, what needs to be implemented in this system and what Brand really talks about, and a lot of his messaging and his videos, and why people really resonate with him, and Ben as well. So the process is just as important. You know, walking the journey, you know, is the exciting part. Learn to embrace the journey, learn to embrace the growth, have love for yourself, you know, be kind. I can be very self-critical, but like, you can do it, you know, and it can be better. Whatever you feel is not as good as you want, but it's going to take work. A discipline is something that I think more the right wing or conservatives subscribe to, that I've learned to more embrace, of like, yeah, like discipline is needed so that the work becomes easier, right? It becomes enjoyable. If you're disciplined, this is Peterson and a lot of David Goggins, these guys talk about it, but it allows you freedom. It allows you, when you do the work, when you do discipline, then it allows you freedom. It allows you more time and energy to spend with people you love. And so, yeah, like it's like, look, guys, like it might not be all sunshine and rainbows. You might get angry at times, you might cry, but I guarantee you'll come out feeling at least glad you gave it a shot and you did the work and you really took a chance to try a new perspective, to look at new assumptions differently. Because even if you go back to the old ones, then you can at least say, hey, like, I have no regrets. This is something to bring this sort of full circle to close it out here, that I was the pitch to clients in financial advising, to use their weapons against them. You'd say, you know, hey, let me look at your portfolio. You know, worst case scenario, you find out more about your portfolio. Best case scenario, you find out some things that we can do to make it better and provide some more, you know, health and wellness in your life, you know? So it's like a win-win, you know? So that's kind of like, you know, look at some other perspectives, you know, check out some of these things I'm talking about seriously, and really hold an open heart and have an open mind, if you really want to see what I can do. But yeah, I appreciate everyone who's trying to do the work, who's opening it. I appreciate you having these conversations, starting to open your mind. It is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. I get it. There's times where I miss it, man, honestly. Like, this sounds weird or cliche, but like, there's times where I miss being like, holy shit. Like, I was getting like, just like, that is like, just those ecstatic rushes of like the knowledge bomb of the dopamine of like something, finding out something's true and be like, wow. And really knowing that it's true, not just like, I kind of think, but really knowing, and then experiencing the things lining up once you start to sort of integrate it. So yeah, I appreciate the time to sort of speak my truth, I guess.
Absolutely. That's why I started this podcast, man, is to get like-minded people to strengthen this community. I do have one last question for you.
Yeah.
I asked Ben this question too. What do you think about alcohol as a drug? And as, you know, society's main drug in many ways, at least this society.
Yeah, you know, it's
preferred intoxicant.
I think
maybe behind coffee.
It ties into it's escapism to a certain degree, right? This is another form of escapism to a certain degree, but it also, I think, is really critical how the person wielding it, where they're coming from, right? What's the intent? Is this used as a really positive social lubricant that I'm going to do just kind of moderately with some friends or family, or a girl that I'm really into, that I really enjoy? Or am I abusing this? And my sister actually works for Al-Anon, so I'm very familiar with alcoholism, certain elements of it running my family, her being very involved with friends and family of alcoholics. And so, like, I think there's a lot of beauty to the 12-step program. I think alcohol, it's got to be used wisely. I mean, it's a powerful thing. But I socially drink, you know, but I also understand that it can have a dark side for sure. It's one of the oldest things that have been around humans. You know, you got to give it down a little bit of credit. Like, it is interesting, just the connection of was it brewerology to humans. It's one of the oldest things we've done. You know, it's like priests were making beer thousands of years ago.
I'm fascinated by it. I am fascinated by the
Yeah,
subject.
it's an
I've had
interesting
alcoholics in my family, but I like alcohol. I like beer and wine. I pretty much have given up liquor because you talk about the dark side of alcohol. Like, it doesn't take much liquor to start.
I like a good
down
White
that
Russian. Ask any of my friends if Evan. I'm the dude. I'm the big Lebowski. I love a White Russian.
Hey, I've drinking plenty in my day, but at this point, I'll drink beers with my buddies, and then I'll drink like some red wine at dinner with a lady
Yeah.
or something. But
Yeah.
there is something about I've seen charts before where it's like, the first couple of drinks will elevate like your overall experience, but it's really a lot shorter of a hump than I think most people realize. Because after that second or third drink, it's like a pretty quick downhill.
Diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Yeah, the law of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just find your good point, right? Find that good point. That's what part of college is for a lot of young men and women is or just that age.
Well, it's a teacher. I feel like alcohol is like a teacher.
Yeah.
And it's teaching you that dosage is important regardless of the drug.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've learned that lesson the hard way, and doing it also with herbal supplements. You learn like, okay, it was this or this. So it's just, I mean, have fun with it, have love for yourself, but learn the fucking lesson at the end of the day. Be like, okay, we'll cut off here when I'm feeling this way, or if I haven't eaten or whatever. Like, know your body, really, understand and check in. But also, man, some of the best times of my life have been when I'm pretty, lubricated. So both. So I mean. It is what it is, but I mean, use it as a tool wisely to the best of how it can be used. But I don't think we should like ban it or anything. We tried that out, saw how that worked.
Oh no, I agree. In fact, I've been drinking probably since I was 14. My dad was like pretty cool about it. I mean, he was pretty much like, I'd rather you drink here and not drive. And
that's how my dad was.
So
I was doing the parties.
I got into it, man, and I got to the point where I was drinking way too often. And then at the beginning of 2020, of course, like the timing on this is just absolutely absurd. January 1st or December 31st, 2020, I'm like, I'm gonna drink tonight, and then I'm not gonna drink for 2020. And of course, like, I was 72, 73 days in when coronavirus hit, and it was almost, a blessing in disguise, because at that point I was pot committed. I wasn't going to go back on not drinking because I was already 72, 73 days in, but being put under a different type of stress, not just a personal stress, but it seemed like the whole world is super stressed out about this pandemic or whatever this thing is that's going on. And like, I really wanted to drink every night.
A lot of people did.
For a few,
I mean, you look at the liquor sales. Yeah, I mean, liquor sales, pot sales, people. Yeah, I mean, and that's where it's tricky, is like set and setting. Just like, you gotta, if you do it, you can do it right during COVID. It's not ideal. It's gonna take a little bit more work, but I think you can do it right. I mean, I think I did it right at times for sure. I mean, I was outside at a bonfire, with friends and family, enjoying it outside, but it shows you, it's kind of scary, like, not to like succumb to fear here, but like it did really wake us up and show us how, like, once we're put into this sort of, whatever you believe, but situation where humans are this very much like forced to stay indoors, and this sort of new design, sort of experiment in a way, how it just as a social experiment, looking at it, like, it's kind of disconcerting how quick people were like, oh man, like I want to turn to these things to deal with this, right?
Yeah.
And it's tying back into your idea of like, if that happened when we had this badass VR, everyone had it, it was really affordable, like a lot of people probably be doing drinking and doing the VR, like, so it's just like a bad trip, man. If you create the bad set and setting, it's gonna create a bad outcome, like. And so I think that's really the biggest disconcerting thing to me for all this, is how much small businesses got destroyed, how much mental health got really wrecked during COVID, and we're still coming back from. There are some silver bullets, but that was always my biggest concern, and we're seeing it right now with this massive resignations. The workers are pushing back, and they're saying, "Look, like, we've got some leverage," and we saw how rich you got during this whole epidemic. You made more money, you made massive billions in profits, especially Amazon, the largest monopoly essentially on consumer spending, over 50%. Everyone was ordering Amazon. COVID was a wet dream for them. I mean, crushed small businesses, massive demand. So you could say it was by design or whatever. That's speculation, harder to prove, but like they definitely benefited. You know, I always ask who benefits, and a lot of people that we want to benefit, as if we're power to the people type, benefited. So problem, reaction, solution, I don't know. And you know, the Wuhan leak, all that, like I don't know for sure if they've proven yet. You know, they haven't definitely proven, you know, that it's by accident or let loose. That's a harder, you know, the deeper sort of conspiracy at this point. I think most people agree definitely, though it definitely came out of Wuhan, out of the lab. But yeah, I mean, so once again, like you don't even need to focus too much on that. Like even if that worst case scenario is the case, you know, speculative speaking, you know, YouTube police or whatever, like we're not saying this, but even if the worst case it was actually led on purpose as like basically a bioweapon, then yeah, that sucks. That's fucked up. And, you know, add it to the list of sucked up, you know, messed up things they've done. But like, what are we going to do about it? You know, are we going to, you know, get really, you know, it's getting me back to like civil disobedience versus direct action. You know, do we expect them to change? Do we expect the wolves in the henhouse to stop acting that way? I mean, they're not gonna, and especially if they're sociopathic and they have so much to lose, they're never going to give this up willingly. So by no means am I supporting violence, but we need to have strength in numbers in nonviolent ways and create new systems that like I don't like you can't any solutions that's relying on them to own their shit is not going to happen. I mean, you've got to either, you know, through, in my opinion, regulation and things to create transparency and accountability have to be implemented, because they're never going to be like, I had, you know, unless they all do psychedelics or find Jesus and then they come like, really, like, is that really so? Yeah, you know, and that's just the hardball of how it is with politics and how these people work. That's how they think and that's how they play. I know how these elite affluent types think. Like, they look at the lower class as plebs. It's very condescending. It's very much just, we're smarter than you, we're better than you, we're a better breed. Some are more even to the darker occult stuff and literally think they're a better species of a human and all this weird stuff that they're into, Moloch and all this ancient Babylonian dark arts weird crap.
Well, and then there's even like the RH negative blood type. Have you heard about this type of stuff?
I don't know if that's true, but yeah, like even if they believe that, like they're smelling their own poop so hard. Like, give me a break, dude. Like, you think you, like, and even if that's the case, like, okay, cool, you know, like, but like, it's just a way for them to justify fucked up actions.
Right. I agree. I agree.
You know, they're just like, and that's, I mean, they get it. They have to tell themselves that bullshit to live at night if they're not sociopathic. I mean, or else you probably would be suicidal or you'd leave the family, and you see that sometimes with certain whistleblowers in these elite families. So yeah, I mean, I get it. They have to. I'm not into as much like the serial killer and all the darker shit, but like from what I've gleaned and stuff, like even if you're the most, you know, gnarly dark art person on the planet, if you're not a sociopath, even if you are, maybe, like, you tend to always find a way to justify your actions. You know, even serial killers, you know, everyone had like, they were, you know, the devils or technology, you know, man, like everyone had their own whole ideal.
The Unabomber, right? And he was he was a Luddite.
He hated basically technocracy and was that the point is, though, they find a way to justify it. I mean, and this is the sort of the idea of like all roads to, you know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Like, I'm a big stickler on like, look, like, I don't know, intentions are different. That's where I don't know, I get torn now on that sort of slogan. But
yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah, no, I'm more saying but like I think it's a certain thing it's starting to hit on. It's like good. I don't know, because like I guess it's weird. Like, you can mean well, but take an action that really does a larger disservice to the whole. I think that's what we're seeing right now with like cancel culture on the left and like.
Well, that's where I think being able to really challenge your worldview and exploring different perspectives is really important.
Right.
Because, you know, yeah, I mean, if you're operating under a worldview where you truly believe that you're doing, you know, good or whatever, and you're actually contributing to the degradation of humanity, it's like maybe you should refine your worldview a little bit.
Well, they're not gonna if nobody challenges them, or because at some point, look, every single one of these people was a little baby. This is like a little bit of Rogan logic I picked up. Is like always remember every single person was a little baby at some point, and then they were continuously bred and taught things that led them to become this person that we see as like this evil, horrible person now. Their mother, their father probably abused them. Their mothers and fathers probably abused them. It's this cycle of trauma, abuse, and just like really dark, materialistic, weird stuff that they've repeated and repeated through many, many hundreds of years. So essentially, it's like, look, like break the cycle. Certain people can break the cycle, but it depends on where you're finding them, right? Like what level of like how ingrained are they? And the most ingrained, the ones really at the top of that probably are like they're gonna go down with the ship. They're probably gonna never really accept that they're wrong because it would just be such a shattering of their identity, everything they've done. Like it would just, I don't think. And if you're sociopathic, I don't even know how that works. I'm not an expert on sociopaths, but like I don't know how you deprogram a sociopath. But basically that's what would have to happen. And I'm not trying to sit around and worry about deprogramming sociopaths. I'm sorry. Like direct action, like much love. We'll do the best rehabilitation we can for them from a loving place, but like let's get to work building this other stuff and not worry about you know, rehabilitating the sociopaths as much. So yeah, the tricky part then is like, okay, well then how do we get rid of the sociopaths? And of course, you know, sort of something all up, like just anything that can be a real solution to implement things. That's really important. You've got to have you have to have discernment and be really a strong critical thinker to, because think about it, like where are you putting your time and energy? Do you want to put it to things that then you find out later are, you know, a waste of time essentially, or a large waste? Like I think a lot of people just, this is the idea of like conscious media and why it's important. And this is where something, for instance, like I'll end on this, and this is something that it's a little bit, I think, for this community for sure. I guess third rail. It's interesting. There's a third rail within a third rail in this community, and that's, for instance, like the Q-Anon movement, for instance. I when I was at Gaia, Q was huge. My friend Ryan is a huge. She was. I don't know if she still is. It's weird. I haven't talked to her about it. I want to talk about her since all the documentary on Netflix or on HBO came out and everything. But I wasn't a Q supporter, but I definitely followed it pretty strong for like about a year with her because she was really into it. And I was because I was really just like, what's going on here? I was really just an observer, like, this is interesting because like there's certain things I saw where like, yeah, I know that independently of research and that is true. But then I had other things I'd be like, oh, that seems weird. And that seems like it has an agenda more slanted towards like a certain government.
Trump.
A certain government in Israel and a certain figure.
Trump.
It was Trump and in Israel very much. I always see like they're always very pro-Trump and pro-Israel. And I basically just though like, and after seeing the HBO doc, I'm like 100%, in my opinion, or very strongly feel that definitely it's this guy Ronald Funch, or was it Ronald Fun, the 8chan guy and his father.
Yeah, I haven't really, I never really dove into it because I never found it.
Right, but
it's intriguing though.
It's intriguing, and he did gravitate and grab a lot of people. But the point is like, you gotta love yourself and be honest when there's that point. Like my friend Ryan did, like where I'm like, there's something wrong here. And another thing happened at Gaia with one of our guests, a similar thing, but like, you got to learn when to be like, all right, I got to cut this. I got to realize I got bullshit. I got to realize I got played, and that's okay. It's all love. But like a lot of people aren't doing that. And that's a huge part in what's going to allow you, like, don't bullshit yourself. Like, a lot of people didn't want to believe Q was fake because it meant they, you know, their identity and all this, their living or this had been wrapped up into it. It happens in a lot of things. It happens in what's happening in big pharma. This is the problem. It can happen in conspiracy circles as well, or true circles, whatever you call it. So just learn. That would be my sort of ending note, is like, have love, but really like learn when you might be off, whether that's flat Earth or this, or like for me, like right now, for instance, to give people a little inside scoop for you here, like Ben and I, like, for instance, one thing is we don't fully see eye to eye on our, I haven't fully been convinced yet about how harmful 5G is. I think there's definitely some evidence that could be disconcerting that Ben talks to, but I just need to see more. I just haven't made up my mind, but Ben's already really in that camp. Ben was that way with like aliens and ETs. He was kind of on the fence, and then we had a long, great discussion about it, and he really came around more. But it's the same with 5G. Same like with certain, I mean, not all, like that's that's one where I think, like, for instance, I'm willing to change my mind, but I guess I just I'm gonna cut myself off here and stop, any more rambling. But I think to leave on this, the key thing is we can have a lot of change, we can have a lot of solutions implemented without needing to agree on every single little thing.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%.
So just always keep that in mind, and as we have change and things implemented, those things that we don't agree on, we can have a more rich and robust conversation with more accurate knowledge and information to really get the real answers. Because the more we deal with the other stuff, it'll also allow the other things to get real transparency, more transparency behind them. So, just remember that, that's my message to the world. Like, we can cause, real change without having every little thing. You see it all over the world. You've seen it on every mass movement throughout history. That's where the real power comes. And I just really appreciate, you letting me speak, about that and give my sort of 2 cents to the movement.
No, man, I appreciate having you on. I did want to just finish my piece. I did succeed. I went 2020 without any alcohol.
Nice.
January 1st, 2021, I was drinking again, and I've been enjoying it probably a little bit more than I should this year. But I think now that we're into October, really since like midsummer, I've chilled out quite a bit and kind of finding that balance, like you were talking about, finding the right setting for it. And
yeah.
it's
a process. Don't be too hard on yourself.
Oh, for sure. But alcohol is really, it's truly, to me, it's that it epitomizes the yin yang, right? Like Johnny Cash says, I walk the line.
Who was that guy?
Yeah.
I blacked out.
Yeah, exactly. So
why is there blood on my pants?
Drink responsibly. That's my farewell message.
Yeah.
It's good talking to you, man. We'll do it again.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too, brother.